Chapter 471. The purple gold robe looked even more gorgeous under the moonlight, and that pattern seemed to be somewhat familiar. It was clearly an arrogant posture, but it was blocked by the half-silver mask, making it look somewhat profound. Shen Miao was not surprised that there was an uninvited person in the middle of the night. She closed the windows without a change in expression, and the room suddenly became dark again. Shen Miao walked to the table and fumbled for a match to light another lamp. Under the warm yellow halo, the fragrance of the clothes and the shadow of the hair seemed exceptionally ambiguous. Shen Miao held the lamp and walked to the opposite of that person to sit down. "You are waiting for me?" The purple-clad youth's voice was low, and it was exceptionally pleasant to hear in the night. Because he deliberately suppressed it, it was somewhat hoarse, but it was like a lover's whisper beside one's ear. His voice was also smiling and seemed to be very happy. Shen Miao stared at the mask on his face. Even the mask could not hide his good looks. That beautiful chin and red lips, on the contrary, because it was covering his true appearance, it was more mysterious and more captivating. It was rumored that everyone in the imperial family of the Great Liang were beautiful. She had never seen Prince Rue's true appearance, but knew that just based on elegance, this person was already outstanding enough. "Your Highness knocked 3 times on the pillar. Is it not to remind this official's daughter to visit at the 3rd watch? This official's daughter does not dare to disobey," she answered. When those words were said, Shen Miao saw it clearly. The lips of the person opposite hooked up and said, "Really smart." His attitude was clearly frivolous and even somewhat romantic, but one did not know why it made one feel some distance. As if one knew the indifference and cruelty in this person's bones. Shen Miao quietly looked at him and said, "What words does your Highness want to say to this official's daughter?" The purple-clad youth casually picked up a black chess piece from the chess basket and played with it. The slender white hand holding the black chess piece showed a kind of exquisite beauty. He swept a glance at the chess game and said, "This chess game is indeed interesting. Little girl, the winds and clouds of the world are all placed in the chess game by you. One do not know where is the Great Liang? Which piece is this prince's chess piece?" He was actually able to see through this chess game with one glance, as it was the current situation of Ming Qi. Shen Miao did not speak. His voice was lazy with some indifference. "This prince saw you at the tribute banquet today and seemed to be old acquaintances with Princess Mingyan. You have seen Princess Mingyan?" Shen Miao's heart tightened. She naturally knew Princess Mingyan, and other than Huang Fu Hao, no one would have any doubts about today's performance. One was a princess of the Qin country, and the other was a young lady of an official's family in the Ming Qi. The Qin country and the Ming Qi were separated by thousands of miles, and it was Princess Mingyan's first time coming to the Ming Qi, so no one would link her with Princess Mingyan. However, the words of the person in front of him tore apart the surface mercilessly and exposed the truth. What did he discover? What did you find? Furthermore, he was able to sense that something was amiss just from the few encounters they had at the banquet. If it was the latter, then the man in front of him was simply too terrifying. However, her eyebrows did not move. Her fingers in her sleeves tightened slightly, and a smile appeared on her face. Unfortunately, this official's daughter had not seen Princess Mingyan before, but is acquainted with His Highness Prince Rue. The purple-clad youth turned his head to look at her and suddenly placed both his hands on the table as he leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "Oh? What?" Shen Miao looked at the person in front of her. His breathing was gentle, but the golden buttons were cold. There was a smile on his lips, but his eyes were somewhat indifferent. One did not know if this was a man of fire or ice, but his entire body was filled with danger. He was attractive enough, but it made Shen Miao instinctively want to avoid him. That pair of dark eyes that were as deep as the sea stared at her. She lowered her head and avoided the other's meaningful gaze, and stared at the exquisite embroidered buttons in front of her before lightly saying, "Long time no see, Xie Jing Xing." Chapter 472. The air seemed to be still at that moment. In the oil lamp, the sparks made a small pai li pa long sound and a small flame fell down. In the dark night, it lit up for a moment before disappearing. Shen Miao raised her head and looked at him. The purple-clad youth smiled faintly as he looked at Shen Miao. Both of their shadows were reflected on the ground, showing a lingering posture, as if he was the one who turned his head to kiss Shen Miao. He slowly retracted his hand and returned to his own position. His voice was still cheerful as he said, "Trust that you have been well, Shen Miao." The purple-clad youth reached out to remove the mask on his face. Sword-like eyebrows, affectionate starry eyes, a nose that was hanging and lips that were painted with rouge. It was as if yesterday he was still a handsome youth with red lips and white teeth, but after 2 years he was a truly handsome man. The smile on his lips was as usual slightly ridiculing and mischievous, but there was no longer the arrogance of a youth in his eyes. That was a kind of depth that made one's heart palpitate. It was as if the dark night was beautiful because of the stars, but the darkness made one terrified. His noble and elegant demeanor was displayed to the extreme after 2 years, and every move had the innate arrogance of a noble. It was as cold as the clear moon, but as dazzling as the scorching sun. Without the restriction of his identity, the Xie Jingxing who appeared again and no longer restrained his brilliance, was so dazzling that one could not ignore him. He looked at Shen Miao with a smile that was not a smile and said ambiguously, "Not seeing for 2 years, who gave you the courage to call my name?" He said it like that, but in the end he had changed this prince to me. Shen Miao said, "Now you are not the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Ming-Chi and do not like to call you by your name. It is also possible to call you Prince Rui." There was finally some sarcasm in the words. From the residence of the Marquis of Lin and in the Ming-Chi to the younger brother of Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang, this time Xie Jingxing had indeed gone astray. But Shen Miao said it politely, but she had underestimated Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing smiled lazily, "It is indifferent to insist on calling my name. But one forgot to tell you that Xie Yuan is my real name and Jingxing is my courtesy name. When you call me Xie Jingxing, you are calling me by my little courtesy name. What? You've grown up and become more passionate." The smile on his lips was evil and frivolous. "Have we reached the point of calling each other little?" Shen Miao glared at him. Other than relatives, only lovers and husband and wife would call each other little. Shen Miao did not expect that after Xie Jingxing changed his identity, Jingxing actually became his little character. Speaking of which, she then remembered that Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang was also surnamed Xie, and the imperial family of the Liang dynasty was the Xie family. What a coincidence. Xie Jingxing was minding his own business pouring tea for himself. After 2 years, Shen Xian had already moved out of the general residence and opened another residence. Xie Jingxing came uninvited and acted as if he was at home as usual. Just like 2 years ago, he treated the Shen mansion as his own courtyard and could come and go as he pleased. He took a sip of tea and glanced at the angry Shen Miao and seemed to find it very interesting. Courtesy demands reciprocity. "What do you want me to call you, Jiao Jiao?" That voice of Jiao Jiao was so sweet that it left a fragrance on one's cheeks. In addition to Xie Jingxing's moving beauty, if it was a normal female, one would have long been bewitched. Shen Miao's body was also hot from being called. She thought that even if Xie Jingxing did not have the identity of the imperial family, he would be able to live well as a prostitute in a small brothel. Perhaps he could even be famous throughout the world. "What are you thinking about?" Xie Jingxing asked. "Thinking that you are born with such beauty that even the top hostess in a small brothel cannot be compared to you. No wonder you need to wear a mask to hide." Shen Miao deliberately angered him. Chapter 473. Xie Jingxing choked and one did not know what he was thinking about as his lazy expression stiffened for a moment. When Shen Miao saw him like this, her heart was extremely carefree. Before she could speak, Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "To be so worried about me, it seems that you are in love with me?" Shen Miao said, "Does Prince Rui know how to write the words thinking too much?" She was disgusted by Xie Jingxing's little words and could not call him little Marquis Xie, so Shen Miao simply used the cold Prince Rui instead, obviously wanting to draw a clear line. "In the beginning when you hugged me and kissed me, you were not this heartless," he said. Shen Miao stared at him incredulously with wide eyes but did not know that this appearance was like a deer that was just born in the mountain stream, with clear and round black eyes that were very delicate. She said, "What do you mean by your words?" Xie Jingxing reached out and pinched her face. His action was too fast and Shen Miao could not dodge in time. When she reacted, Xie Jingxing had already retracted his hand and thought for a moment before saying, "It seems that you do not remember. On the first night you left the capital, I had bid farewell to you." Shen Miao was stunned and looked at him without speaking. Xie Jingxing sighed, "Indeed, after drinking wine, one do not recognize others. You do not remember what you did to me?" Shen Miao's face revealed a tangled expression. As the saying goes, one's temperament will be messed up after drinking. Her alcohol tolerance was actually not bad, but the plum blossom wine that night was too intoxicating. She wanted to prevent herself from saying the wrong things and causing others to be suspicious, so she avoided everyone and slept alone in a room. She did not think that Xie Jingxing came over? Prince Rui must be joking. Prince Rui and I are just acquaintances, what can I do? Shen Miao suppressed the uneasiness in her heart but her face was calm. But she knew very little about the matters between men and women, and in her previous life she only blindly fawned over Fu Xiu and was not clear about a male's thoughts. In this aspect she was really as immature as a white paper. And to deal with a black-hearted person like Xie Jingxing, she was really too inexperienced. Xie Jingxing smiled and was not in a hurry to refute and spoke unhurriedly. You seem to want to be an empress. After getting drunk, you still want a pulley gong to watch the fireworks and even want the crown prince and princess to accompany? He looked at Shen Miao with interest. Empress Shen? Shen Miao was originally trying to cover up the tea she was drinking and almost spurted it out. How many years had it been since she heard this form of address? For a moment, Shen Miao almost thought that she was dreaming. She feared that after her rebirth she was filled with flowers and the reality of her loved ones was just a beautiful dream, and after she woke up she would still be in that cold palace, walking step by step towards the end of her family being wiped out. Shen Miao's entire body stiffened and she had to admit a fact. She originally thought that Xie Jingxing deliberately said that to trick her, but now it seemed that Xie Jingxing really came that night and really saw the scene after she was drunk. Otherwise Xie Jingxing was not a deity, how could he know so many things? But, how much did she say and how much did Xie Jingxing hear? Xie Jingxing was so smart, how much did he guess? When Xie Jingxing saw her uneasy look, his eyes darkened but his lips hooked up into a smile. There is no need to be so afraid. I have always been tolerant towards women. Do you want to know what you did to this king? What did I do? Shen Miao looked at him calmly. Nothing much. Xie Jingxing lazily supported his chin with his hand and seemed to be thinking, but the words that he said were shocking. You only hugged me and did not let me go, pressed me down and kissed me, cried and shouted that you want to be my empress, and wanted me not to neglect you. Shen Miao, I did not do that kind of thing, Shen Miao said. No matter how drunk she was, she would not have any beautiful thoughts towards Xie Jingxing. Moreover, that kind of style was not her style of doing things. Chapter 474. You want to deny? Xie Jingxing frowned. This is not honest, Shen Jiaojiao. I will give you money. Shen Miao made a prompt decision. I can compensate you however much you want. Xie Jingxing quietly looked at her for a while and Shen Miao did not know why, but she felt that his gaze was like a knife, as if Xie Jingxing could not wait to kill her. After a long while, Xie Jingxing then smiled and gritted his teeth. Do you treat me as a prostitute or a male pet? Money? This prince is never short of money. Shen Miao was silent. Xie Jingxing took a deep breath and said, How did you discover it? Shen Miao did not expect him to change the topic and asked puzzledly, What? Xie Jingxing picked up the mask on the table. How did you discover my identity? 2 years ago I died in battle and no matter what, it is not reasonable to guess my identity upon meeting. One had already guessed it before seeing you. Shen Miao said, Guessed that you are from the Great Liang but did not guess that you are from the imperial family. Afterwards when one saw you at the tribute banquet, one vaguely felt that you were familiar and boldly guessed it. When Xie Jingxing heard it, he gradually frowned and looked at Shen Miao. Guessed it 2 years ago? That night in Wulong Temple, the little marquis came over to drink tea and eat snacks. Shen Miao's expression was calm. Luckily I was able to eat a little of that snack. Xie Jingxing raised his brows. So what about it? Unfortunately. Shen Miao said, that snack seemed to be made by the Great Liang imperial family's chef and the taste was very delicious. Xie Jingxing was slightly startled. 2 years ago he encountered the scene of Shen Miao framing Shen Qing and Prince Yu in Wulong Temple and because of interest, he simply went to her room with Shen Miao. Because he was out running all night and was hungry, he borrowed Shen Miao's tea to eat some snacks. He even fed Shen Miao a piece. He himself was working in Mingqi and was at the end living like a prince. The Great Liang's pastry chef was also by his side and that bag of pastries came from the hands of the Great Liang chef. Xie Jingxing had thought of many clues that Shen Miao could guess his identity but he never expected that it would be this. A bag of pastries would actually reveal some clues. But his eyes were sharp as he looked at Shen Miao. How do you know that this was made by the Great Liang chef? I was fortunate to eat it once, Shen Miao said. She had indeed eaten it once. In Ming Qi's tribute banquet, naturally there would be congratulatory gifts from other countries. As for the pastries, it was just a small gimmick. Emperor Yonglu of Mingqi loved to eat pastries, so the imperial family chef was ingenious and added fruit juice into the pastries, giving the pastries a fruity flavor. It was because of the novelty of eating cold pastries during the tribute banquet that Shen Miao specially made it for Fu Xiuyi a few times. It was just that Fu Xiuyi did not like to eat sweets and would always give it to the servants, making her sad for a while. And the pastries that Xie Jingxing ate that night had the fruity flavor of the Liang imperial family's pastries, and at that time the tributes had not been paid yet, so it was impossible for the pastries to be passed over. At that time Shen Miao felt strange. Although Xie Jingxing didn't know where Shen Miao ate this cake, he didn't ask much. That's all? It was just a lucky guess. Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Just based on a bag of pastries, how could she be sure that Xie Jingxing was from the Great Liang? The real suspicion started from that imperial physician Gao Yang, that she saw in the palace. At that time she only felt that he was familiar, but later on she finally remembered that she had seen this imperial physician Gao before. In the tribute banquet in the previous lifetime, the people that the Great Liang sent over were a prince of first rank and an important minister. That important minister was a famous think tank in the Great Liang, and at that time Fu Xiuyi let Pei Lang pay more attention to this person. It was not anyone else but Gao Yang. Gao Yang's identity at that time was not some imperial physician Gao but a minister of the Great Liang. And that day in Ming Qi's palace she saw that there was a familiarity between Xie Jingxing and Gao Yang, and in addition to the pastries previously, she more or less made some connections. Chapter 475. Afterwards she went to the northwestern region and the news of Xie Jingxing's death came. After the previous shock, Shen Miao slowly calmed down. In the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing should not have gone to war at this time, but in the previous lifetime and this lifetime, Xie Jingxing had the same ending. Shen Miao did not believe in fate. Moreover, with her understanding of Xie Jingxing in this lifetime, she did not believe that such a powerful person like Xie Jingxing would die so miserably. If one were to say that Xie Jingxing was planning something with this step, she would somewhat believe it. If one were to say that dying in battle would allow one to start over with a new identity, and there would be less trouble, it would be in line with this person's straightforward character. One had to know that with the identity of the little Marquis of the Linan Prefecture, one would not be able to support Xie Jingxing's ambition. What exactly was his ambition? Shen Miao's gaze landed on the black and white chessboard and a trace of horror flashed in her heart. Your luck has always been good. Xie Jingxing looked at her calmly. But Shen Miao hesitated for a moment and finally could not help but ask, how did you become the current Prince Rue? Did Xie Jingxing create a fake identity? If that was the case, his guts were really too big. The person he impersonated was not someone else but the imperial family of the Great Liang and was even Emperor Yongli's younger brother. If it was discovered, one feared that dying 1,000 times was not enough. But if it was true, then what was his identity for the past 10 years? Why would he become Xie Ding's son in Ming Qi? I was originally Prince Rue of the Great Liang dynasty. Xie Jingxing said, now it is returned to its rightful owner. Shen Miao's heart moved. Marquis Xie is not your father? Xie Jingxing smiled in disdain. Marquis of Linan? What qualifications does he have to be my father? That meant that Xie Jingxing was not Xie Ding's biological son. Shen Miao's heart became more and more aghast. Xie Jingxing's identity would most likely involve a lot of things, and she had never paid attention to these things in the previous lifetime. Shen Miao suddenly thought of how in the previous lifetime, Fu Xiuyi did not spare any effort to suppress Xie Jingxing and did not hesitate to arrange his people in the Xie family's army. At the end, Xie Jingxing died in the hands of his own people, and the Xie father and son were buried on the battlefield. Other than Xie Changwu and Xie Changchao, there were no other descendants in the Xie family. Was it really because the Fu family wanted to attack the Xie family for their meritorious deeds, or Fu Xiuyi had already discovered that Xie family's identity was not right? Fu Xiuyi wanted to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? When Xie Jingxing saw her flickering expression, his eyes became deep and his smile became even more gentle. His appearance had grown. His handsomeness and beauty were perfectly blended together. He was both good and evil at the same time. He was very good looking. He knocked on the table. You've made a lot of progress in meeting an old friend today. Shen Miao recovered to her senses and said as she looked at him, Prince Rue is also very glorious now. From the residence of the Marquis of Linan's little Xie Marquis to the current Prince Rue, Xie Jingxing became more and more valuable. Originally in the Ding capital, he could walk sideways in Ming Qi, but now that Prince Rue's reputation was out, one feared that he would ascend to the heavens. Are you satisfied? Xie Jingxing's lips curled into a smile. Are you proud? Shen Miao's brows were dignified. This official's daughter is a Ming Qi person and Prince Rue is a Great Liang person. Well, water does not interfere with river water, so why would there be glory? Xie Jingxing picked up the mask on the table and wore it again. The silver mask fitted his facial features very well, and not only did it not cover up his brilliance, it made his mysterious temperament even more bewitching. "When you kissed me, what you said was not this sentence." His eyes were more moving than the autumn moon outside as it flowed over Shin Miao's body. "Did you not say that I am your person?" Shin Miao refused to admit it to death. Prince Rui had misremembered. "In the future I will help you remember." Xie Jingxing stood up and a corner of his purple robe brushed across the table, messing up that game of chess. He said, "I will come and see you next time, Shin." Jiao Jiao. Shin Miao. Xie Jingxing flew out of the window. Shin Miao looked at his back and thought that after tomorrow, she must ask Shin Qiu to arrange for a few more guards at the courtyard doors. In any case, there were quite a number of experts living in this residence. Shin Xian, Luo Shuiyan and Shin Qiu were people who had been in the army before, so how could they not be alert at all? It was really a joke to allow one to come and go freely in the residence. Outside the window, there was a purple-clad male walking along the streets of the Shin mansion. At the third watch of the night, there was no one on the streets and there was only this male and the guard behind him, with their long shadows swaying under the moonlight. Even the moonlight could not cover up the brilliance and the silver mask was shining brightly. That guard behind him said, "Master's mood seems to be good." He said that he was seeing an old friend, but after entering the Shin mansion and coming out, his lips were raised from the beginning to the end. One did not know what happy event had he heard to be this happy. The youth swept a glance at the guard. The golden threads on his sleeves were faintly discernible and the embroidered clothes in the night made him look heroic. His eyes seemed to be smiling yet not smiling and his voice was as pleasant as the spring breeze. Naturally, it is good to see an interesting person. Chapter 476. On the second day, Shin Miao woke up late. Xie Jingxing only came yesterday in the middle of the night and after speaking to him, he was already very tired and slept the entire night without any dreams. When he woke up, it was already very late. Shin Miao rarely got up to be lazy and Luo Shuiyan thought that she was tired from the tribute banquet yesterday, thus she let people specially prepare food for Shin Miao to eat after she woke up. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan went to the Ministry of War early in the morning. They had just been reinstated and there were many old matters that needed to be settled. Shin Qiu and Luo Ling were not in the room and because Luo Ling was looking for a new job, Shin Xian simply let Luo Ling help Shin Qiu, so that those people would not bully Luo Ling for being a newcomer. As such, in this brand new Shin mansion, there was only Luo Tan and Shin Miao. Coincidentally, Feng and Ning sent an invitation to Shin Miao and wanted Shin Miao to accompany her to pick some jewelry. Shin Miao let Luo Tan go and assigned a few guards from the Shin residence to Luo Tan, saying that she was tired today and wanted to rest in the residence for a day. Luo Tan did not say anything else and only left after exhorting Shin Miao. After Luo Tan left, Shin Miao let Imo Qing send a letter to Guangwen Tang and Imo Qing complied before leaving. After 2 years there were some changes in the Ding capital. For example, the once popular and bustling Bao Xiang Lu young lady Lu Ying was finally redeemed by that infatuated gentleman Mo for a high price of 1,000 taels of gold. Without a young lady Lu Ying, the long-lost double-sided embroidery quietly appeared in the Ding capital and one piece of embroidered silk could be sold for 100 taels of silver. One heard that the embroidery lady not only had outstanding skills but was also beautiful. That embroidery shop also made a lot of money. If one changed their way of living it might not be worse. No one knew what the new hope was after taking that step. Lu Ying was living so well that the people who were worried about her would naturally be happy. Pei Lang was a trustworthy person and the moment Shin Miao saw Pei Lang at the tribute banquet, she had an idea in her heart. Pei Lang had already obtained Fu Xiuyi's trust. Thus Fu Xiuyi would bring Pei Lang by his side. Even though Fu Xiuyi was suspicious, it was only after he became the ruler. In all fairness, the current Fu Xiuyi still appreciated and cherished talented people. Pei Lang was a person with a ravine in his chest and Fu Xiuyi would definitely think of ways to keep Pei Lang by his side. Because of this, now that Fu Xiuyi had tested Pei Lang's talent, he should also test Pei Lang's loyalty. She could not rashly go to see Pei Lang, lest Fu Xiuyi became suspicious. This pawn had not even crossed the boundary between Chu and Han. She said, "Take out a cloak." Bai Lu and Shuangjiang were tidying up the room when they heard the question, "Is young lady going out?" Shin Miao said, "There are some matters that need to be done." Bai Lu and Shuangjiang no longer spoke. Guyu quietly went forward to comb Shin Miao's hair while Jingzhe went to look for the cloak. Imperceptibly, Shin Miao's few maids immediately obeyed her orders. If someone saw this, they would definitely be surprised. Even the maids trained in the palace would not be so agile and calm. After leaving the residence, Mo Qing went to Guangwen Tang and Xin Miao called Qi. Xin Miao was now much closer to Xin Qiu's subordinates. Initially when they were in the northwest region, Xin Miao gave Xin Qiu a number of ideas on the art of war, and these were naturally what she had heard from Fu Xiuyi's aides. It was just following the gourd, but in other people's eyes, they felt that Xin Miao was a brilliant strategist and had the talent to be a general. Those soldiers were all uncouth men, but they also admired Xin Miao's brain and were more respectful towards her. Xin Miao said to Qi, "Do not tell others about going out today." Qi's heart quivered. He was originally loyal to Xin Qiu, and at this moment he felt the pressure under Xin Miao's clear eyes as he nodded his head, yes. Chapter 477. Qi found an ordinary carriage for Xin Miao. This carriage was not eye-catching and no one would recognize that it was the Xin family's carriage. There was no other reason than that Xin Miao had offended Princess Mingyan from the Qin country yesterday, and Princess Mingyan and Huangfu Hao were staying in the Yanqing alley that was not far from here. If one were to bump into them, it would be bad if Princess Mingyan found trouble with Xin Miao. This princess was very arrogant and willful. There were many guards in the Qin country, and if anything were to happen, it would be too late for Xin Xian and wife to rush over with their men. However, Qi was still very puzzled. After leaving the Ding capital for 2 years, if there was anyone in the Ding capital who had a friendship with Xin Miao, it would be the eldest young lady of the Feng residence, Feng and Ning. But today when Xin Miao rejected Feng and Ning's invitation, it was obvious that she was not going to see Feng and Ning. Qi's thoughts ran wild. He thought of the stories that Luo Tan had told Luo Chen in the past at the Luo family, and his heart quivered. If it was really a play of a gentleman and a beauty being intimate, Qi had to tell Xin Qiu about it even if he had to risk his life. It wasn't easy for their Xin family to produce such a talented and beautiful young lady. How could she be abducted by some wild boy who came out of nowhere? But he had never thought that the place Xin Miao wanted to go to was the Feng Xian pawnshop. The Feng Xian pawnshop was still the same as 2 years ago, it was still deserted. After all, not everyone had treasures that could be pawned here. Xin Miao got off the carriage and Qi followed closely behind. Jingzhi and Guyu also jumped down. Before Qi had time to size her up, he saw that Xin Miao had already walked towards the pawnshop. The waiter, who was still wiping the dust on the table with a handkerchief, saw 4 people walking towards him. The person in the lead was wearing a cloak. She pulled down the hood of her cloak, revealing a delicate and pretty face. It was clear that she was a pampered girl from a wealthy family. Her entire body exuded a noble aura that no one dared to look down on. He smiled fawningly and said, "Miss, do you want to pawn something?" Xin Miao glanced at him. The pawnshop assistant had already changed and heard that after they went to the Shaochun city, the Feng Xian pawnshop was closed for 2 years. It was only recently reopened, but one did not know if that Hong Ling young lady and Ji Yushu were still there. She said, "I'm looking for Hong Ling." The young waiter was surprised for a moment and carefully sized up Xin Miao again. Xin Miao looked at him calmly, and the young waiter paused for a moment before quickly saying, "May young lady wait for a moment?" He then turned and entered the back hall. A moment later, a red-clothed woman came, followed by the shop assistant from before. She was still wearing a red dress, and her appearance was quite charming. Compared to 2 years ago, she was even more charming. When she saw Xin Miao, her eyes congealed before suddenly smiling. "Long time no see. Young lady is more and more outstanding," making Hong Ling unable to open her eyes. These impudent and rude words were spoken by Hong Ling, but they did not seem cheap. Instead, there was an inexplicable sense of cheerfulness. Xin Miao nodded her head slightly. Hong Ling smiled again and said, "Same old rules. Young lady, follow me." But she pointed her jade finger at Qi and smiled tenderly, "This blockhead cannot follow us." Qi's character was lively and was not as cold as Mo Qing. Being pointed at by Hong Ling, such a flirtatious lady boss, his face turned red. But he still insisted, "This subordinate will follow young lady. You wait here." Xin Miao said, "I am going to see a friend. Jingzhi and Guyu will follow." Her tone was firm and Qi could not say anything to refute. It was Hong Ling who saw this. A strange look flashed in her eyes. Most likely she did not expect that Xin Miao, such a delicate little person, would be able to teach the guards that she brought over a lesson so obediently. Moreover, no matter if it was Mo Qing or Qi, they all respected Xin Miao from the bottom of their hearts. A capable subordinate would more or less have some arrogance, but in front of Xin Miao, these people did not have any arrogance at all. Chapter 478. Xin Miao was a capable person. Hong Ling brought Xin Miao to Lin Jiangxian's small building. Jingzhe and Guyu followed behind as Shin Miao asked. One heard that the Feng Xian pawn shop reopened not long ago. 2 years ago. 2 years ago there was a change in the shopkeeper's family and he closed the shop and returned to his hometown. Not long ago he returned to the Ding capital. Hong Ling smiled and took over the conversation. Speaking of which, young lady is the first regular customer that our pawn shop has met. Shin Miao calculated in her heart before agreeing with a smile. When they arrived at the small building just like before, Hong Ling placed her in an elegant room and said, Hong Ling will go and call the innkeeper right now. Miss, please sit here and have some tea. Please wait for a moment. After saying that, she left. There were plums and tea on the table and the fragrance of incense curled up. This elegant room was exactly the same as before. Such a big shop like the Feng Xian pawn shop that did not do business for 2 years was actually just left like that and not rented to others. It really had the appearance of a wealthy landlord. Shin Miao had not finished her cup of tea when there was the sound of someone pushing the door open. She put down the teacup and saw a person wearing an emerald green robe with a golden crown on his head walking in with a smile. This person still had a baby face, but after all, because of the 2 years of experience, he showed a bit of youthful maturity. It was just that the mischievous look on his face was as before. But Shin Miao looked at him. Jiu Shu was able to wear such gaudy clothes so happily. This person was really coquettish in his bones. When Jiu Shu pushed the door open and saw Shin Miao, his eyes brightened and did not hide it at all as he praised. Originally thought that young lady Xiao Yao was the most beautiful young lady that this one had seen, but now it seems that Shin young lady is not much inferior. Not seen for 2 years, Shin young lady has become even more elegant that this one is unable to find words to praise young lady. When Jingzhe and Guyu saw it, there was a look of displeasure on their faces. Jiu Shu's words were like that of a lecher who molested good young females. But these kinds of nonsense were matched with an innocent face, which made one confused if he was deliberately pretending to be stupid or if he was just saying it unintentionally. Shin Miao smiled gently. Manager Ji is also wealthier than before. Her eyes swept across Jiu Shu's gaudy clothes. Jiu Shu sat opposite Shin Miao and poured a cup of tea for himself. He looked very happy and seemed to be genuinely happy for the reunion. He said, one did not expect that young lady Shen would still remember this old friend of mine. One heard that General Shen had just returned to the capital and young lady Shen was not in a hurry to see others but came to the Feng Xian pawn shop. It seems that you really regard this one as a trustworthy person. I'm very touched. Shin Miao. Last night there was just a person who thought that he was in love and now there was another one in front of her. Shin Miao felt a headache coming on. Moreover, Jiu Shu said it in all seriousness, he really thought that Shin Miao was this close to him. Shin Miao coughed lightly. Actually, one came here today to do business with Manager Ji. Just returned to the Ding capital and there are many things that one is not clear about, thus one need to rely on Bai Shaoxing. Jiu Shu was first startled before saying, do business? No problem. Whatever young lady Shin wants to know, Bai Shaoxing will do his best. As for the money, since this one and young lady Shin are friends, one will give young lady Shin a discount of 20%. Jingzhe and Guyu rolled their eyes at the back. Jiu Shu was in charge of such a big family business and on the surface it was a pawn shop but in fact it was a business without capital. Once a business turned into a steady stream of money, he was actually so stingy to only reduce 20%? Indeed, there was no businessman without ulterior motives. Shin Miao smiled gently. Money is easy to discuss but this time the news is not easy to handle. Jiu Shu said, young lady Shin really know how to joke. Initially my Feng Xian pawn shop even accepted the business of creating news, so what is there to not accept now? Chapter 479. But Manager Ji has not been in Mingqi for 2 years. One feared that it would be troublesome to inquire about Mingqi's matters. She said. Jiu Shu smiled and there was an indescribable pride in his eyes. Shin young lady must not underestimate the Feng Xian pawn shop. Even though this one was not in the Ding capital for 2 years and the Feng Xian pawn shop was closed, but the business still needs to be done. Otherwise where would the money come from to support the family? Bai Shaoxing is still doing it. After all, 2 years of harvest cannot be thrown away in vain. Shin young lady finished speaking. What news do you want to inquire about? My Feng Xian pawn shop will naturally serve young lady. Shin Miao chuckled. Since Manager Ji said so, I am assured. Today one is here to do 3 business deals and all of them are to buy news. First, does Manager Ji know about the death of the little Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin in 2 years ago? Jiu Shu was surprised for a moment and looked at Shin Miao. Why is Shin young lady inquiring about this? The Xie family and my Shin family are after all Mingqi's military family. Even though the Marquis of Lineage and my father do not have the same political views, but martial artists appreciate each other. As the saying goes, the fox grieves when the rabbit dies. The little Marquis of Xie's generation was a talent but died tragically on the battlefield, thus one feel pity in one's heart. One would like to ask Manager G to help me to inquire about the clues of the little Marquis' death, including the matter of keeping it in. Ji Yushu drank a mouthful of tea and smiled. This is easy to handle. It is just that the matter of Xie Jingxing's death is known to everyone, so it is not easy to inquire about different things. This one cannot guarantee that one would be able to inquire about it. After all, the lamp goes out after a person dies and it has been too long. Manager G just have to do things diligently. If one really cannot find it, it is also alright with me. Shen Miao picked up the teapot and poured herself a cup of tea before speaking lightly. The second business deal. Does Manager G know that there is an imperial physician in the Ming Qi's palace called Gao Yang? With a huge sound, Ji Yushu spurted out a mouthful of tea. Shen Miao gave Jingzhe a look and Jingzhe quickly handed over a handkerchief. Ji Yushu took the handkerchief and wiped the water stains on his body in a flurry before hearing Shen Miao saying, Manager G seems to be very surprised? Ko. Ji Yushu said, indeed somewhat surprised. Why would Shen young lady think of looking for the imperial physician in the palace? I was entrusted by someone. Shen Miao looked at him. Shopkeeper Ji, have you never heard of this name? Gao Yang shook his head. This is the first time hearing about it. It seems that her medical skills are not that good, otherwise she would have been famous throughout the world. He looked at Shen Miao and said with some difficulty, to be honest with you, how would young lady be involved with the palace? Although Bai Shaoxing is doing business, there are too many forces involved in the palace. It's not good for us businessmen to take risks. Shen Miao looked at him and did not speak, but her calm eyes made Ji Yushu somewhat uneasy. Ji Yushu coughed twice and inexplicably his voice became softer. It is not that it is not possible, but one need to add more money. Manager Ji need not worry about money. Shen Miao smiled. Manager Ji will not be short of it. After Shen Miao's first two deals, Ji Yushu was already short of breath with a guilty conscience and laughed dryly twice. One do not know what is the third news that Shen young lady wants to buy about? The third deal is somewhat difficult. Shen Miao looked at him, but I believe that with Manager Ji's ability, it is only a matter of time. When Ji Yushu heard it, he forced a smile. Many thanks to Shen young lady's trust, but what is it that can make Shen young lady feel difficult? I want to inquire about a person. Shen Miao put down the teacup. His Highness Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Ji Yushu's hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly, but his face had an unfathomable expression. Oh? Why would Shen young lady think of inquiring about His Highness Prince Rui? According to this one's knowledge, this His Highness Prince Rui just came to the Ding capital not long ago. Even if there is a friendship, at most Shen young lady would be able to see him at the tribute banquet. Could it be that Shen young lady is like those noble females and admire Prince Rui's beauty, so she specially came to inquire? When Ji Yushu said till the end, one did not know why he became happy again. His voice changed from the depression earlier to a rare excitement. Chapter 480. Jingzhe and Guyu were about to explode from anger at the back. Ji Yushu's mouth was full of nonsense, and if it was heard by people outside, one did not know how they would think of Shen Miao. But when the master spoke, the servants could not interrupt. Thus both of them could only endure their anger and look at Ji Yushu in disdain. Shen Miao lightly looked at Ji Yushu's excited appearance of scratching his ears and cheeks and suddenly smiled. Yes. I also admire his peerless beauty. Ji Yushu was surprised. He suddenly opened his mouth wide as he pointed at Shen Miao in disbelief and stammered, Titi, these words are true? Shen Miao nodded her head and said seriously, really? Ji Yushu seemed to have discovered a great secret and could not suppress his excited expression. He laughed twice and said, since that is the case, this one will definitely help young lady to inquire about Prince Rui's situation. See if there are other young ladies around him. Shen Miao got up and nodded her head at Ji Yushu, then many thanks to Manager Ji. If you find anything, trouble someone to send a letter to the residence and I will naturally come to Feng Xian pawn shop to meet with Manager Ji. She took out a silver ingot from her sleeves and placed it in front of Ji Yushu. This is the deposit. Ji Yushu smiled. Shen young lady is too polite. There is no need to talk about deposit between you and me. As he spoke, he kept the silver ingot into his sleeves. Jingzhe and Guyu rolled their eyes at him a few more times. Shen Miao smiled. It is a matter of course to take money to do things. It is just that Manager Ji needs to remember one point. Her eyes were gentle, but the words that she said had a bit of sharpness. by Shaoxin's rule of doing business is that goods are genuine at fair prices. Since one came to Manager Ji to inquire about information, naturally one would not wish to hear fake information. The information must be true and it is best if it is useful to me. Otherwise one would have spent the money but obtained useless information. Xin Miao lowered her head and smiled. It would be bad if Manager Ji's reputation was ruined and the business could not continue. Ji Yushu was surprised for a moment when Xin Miao had already called Jingzhe and Guyu out. He was stunned for a moment and heard Hong Ling sending Xin Miao off with a smile. He looked at the teacup in front of him and suddenly sneezed. He rubbed his nose and stood up before pushing the door to the neighboring room. He pulled open a landscape painting in front of him and behind it was a door. Ji Yushu opened the door and just walked in when he was kicked by someone and almost fell down. As soon as he closed the door, he angrily shouted at the instigator, "Gao Yang!" The person sitting behind the door was in fluttering white robes and had a sage-like demeanor. He was waving his folding fan and had a cultured and elegant appearance, but the words that he said were not polite. "Ji Yushu, is there something wrong with your brain? If you carry on like this, you would not even know if you are sold as a fool." Ji Yushu said angrily, "You are smart. You are smart, but others still found out the clues." He said he wanted to see Imperial Physician Gao. "Shut up." The person in the corner finally couldn't help but speak. Who else could it be other than Xie Jingxing, who was dressed in a luxurious purple robe? He swept a glance at Ji Yushu, noisy. Ji Yushu felt wronged and said, "Third older brother, I do not know anything. I left the capital with you and just returned when others found out that something was wrong. This is clearly Gao Yang's fault." Ji Yushu looked at Gao Yang fiercely. "Speak. Is there something wrong with you that was seen by Xin young lady?" This elegant room was adjacent to the previous elegant room, thus one could clearly hear the conversation between Ji Yushu and Xin Miao. Both of their conversation was heard by Xie Jingxing and Gao Yang. One knew that the three people that Xin Miao inquired about were all here, so it was strange to think about it. "Ji Yushu, are you stupid?" Gao Yang said. "Xin Miao only returned to the Ding capital a few days ago. Unless she has clairvoyance, how would she know what I did in the palace? I still suspect that there is a problem with you." Chapter 481. What problem do I have? Xin young lady did not inquire about me. Why would she inquire about you without any rhyme or reason? Could it be that she is fond of you? But Xin young lady does not admire third older brother's beauty? Ji Yushu thought of something and smiled mischievously. "Ha ha ha, Xin young lady is also smitten by third older brother. Only a fool like you would believe this kind of nonsense." Gao Yang looked at him coldly. "Do you think that everyone is like you who would be blinded by beauty?" Ji Yushu patted his chest. "I cannot win against you in words. I will not talk to you anymore. Third older brother, what to do now? Do you look for her? Or just randomly fabricate news to deceive her?" Since Xin Miao inquired about these three news, she must have some understanding. If one were to deceive, one might be discovered. What was Xin Miao's intention? Now one really could not see the Xin family's position clearly. In these 2 years, there was also that Pei Lang who had a private friendship with Xin Miao, and now he had become Fu Xiuyi's confidant. How could a young lady be so complicated? Gao Yang rambled on for a while and discovered that Xie Jingxing did not listen to his words at all and was looking at the teapot on the table, not knowing what he was thinking about, so he reminded, "Xie, Your Highness, how to deal with this time." Xie Jingxing recovered to his senses and thought about it. "No need to deal with it." "What?" Without waiting for Gao Yang to speak, Ji Yushu spoke first. "Not earning money? Moreover, Xin young lady is exceptionally intelligent. If one were to really reject like this, she would definitely discover that something is wrong. What if it is discovered that there is something wrong with our Fengxian pawnshop?" Xie Jingxing smiled faintly. "It is because she is intelligent that one need not deal with it." "Your meaning is?" Gao Yang's brows frowned. "She discovered that something is not right and came over to probe." Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes and his lips hooked up. "Those words were not said for you to hear, but for me to hear." "That peerless beauty?" Ji Yushu's focus was always on other things. Xie Jingxing swept a cold glance at him and said, "It was also said for me to hear." In the carriage outside, Jingzhe and Guyu carefully looked at Xin Miao's expression and Guyu softly said, "Young lady, did that manager Ji say something wrong?" The girl looks a little angry. She was indeed very angry. Even though Xin Miao looked calm on the surface, the coldness around her made the two maids feel it. He seemed to be sulking but also seemed to be angry. He was just suppressing his anger. Jingzhe and Guyu were very puzzled as they heard Xin Miao and Ji Yushu talking in the elegant room. Even though Ji Yushu's words were not pleasant to hear, but just now Shen Miao was still fine. Moreover, Shen Miao was not a person who would get angry because of words. Jingzhi and Guyu did not understand. Shen Miao lightly replied, "Nothing?" But her tone became colder. She clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves, but there was an uncontrollable stifling feeling in her heart. Didn't the Fengxian pawnshop close down after she left and reopen not long before she returned to the capital? How could there be such a coincidence in the world? All the coincidences in the world could be traced. Shen Miao carefully thought about it. When the Fengxian pawnshop closed, other than Shen Xian going to the Shaochun city, there was another major event that happened, and that was Xie Jingxing requesting the commander to send out troops. As for the reopening of the Fengxian pawnshop, other than her returning to the capital, was it not coincidentally the Ming-Chi's tribute, when the Crown Prince of Qin and Prince Rui arrived at the Ding capital? The Shen family and the Fengxian pawnshop did not have any relationship, so naturally it would not be related to the Shen family. Huang Fuhao was not in the Ding capital 2 years ago, so no matter how one thought about it, the closure and reopening of the shop had an indelible relationship with Xie Jingxing. Today she came to the Fengxian pawnshop to probe. The result of the probe was indeed as she expected. Jiu Shu and Xie Jingxing were old acquaintances, and it was the same for Gao Yang. Connecting everything, one feared that Jiu Shu and Gao Yang were great Liang's people, but had hidden their identities in the Ding capital. The most hateful thing was that when she did business with Jiu Shu, she revealed everything about Prince Yu residence, and one feared that Xie Jingxing already knew everything clearly. She thought that she had taken the initiative and had Jiu Shu firmly in her grasp, but in the end Xie Jingxing was the aureole behind. Thinking of how Xie Jingxing played people like a fool, Shen Miao could not wait to tear Xie Jingxing apart. Her heart was stifled. When Jingzhi saw the situation, she thought that she was tired of the heat and opened the curtain to get some fresh air, but quickly put it down again. Shen Miao casually glanced and did not expect to see a familiar face in the crowd on the street. Jingzhi put down the curtain but was stopped by Shen Miao's shout to stop the carriage. She opened the curtain and looked towards the direction just now, but there was no longer that face in the crowd. "Young lady?" Jingzhi and Guyu were alarmed by Shen Miao's actions today. But they saw Shen Miao carefully looking outside the carriage for a while before putting down the curtain. Nothing much. Continue on. It was just that her brows were locked tightly and her expression was even more solemn than before. Chapter 482. Shen Xian and wife returned to the capital with such great fanfare, and Shen Miao was in the limelight in front of all the civil and military officials in Ming-Chi's tribute banquet. At the same time everyone was talking about it, they also turned their eyes towards the original formidable general residence. The formidable great general was no longer there, and the signboard of the general residence had long been removed and replaced with the Shen residence. At the beginning, when Shen Xian was demoted and left the capital, the Shen family not only did not send charcoal in the snowy weather, but also proposed to separate at the crucial moment, to draw a clear relationship with Shen Xian. Now that Shen Xian was once again highly regarded by Emperor Wenhui, no matter what Emperor Wenhui's intention was, outsiders would see the Shen family as gloating, and as for the Shen family themselves, naturally they had to swallow the bitter fruit. In Rongjing Tang, old Shen Furen was sitting on the couch, and the fur on the couch was the wolf skin that was hunted in the northwest region when Shen Xian was still alive. Because it had been a long time, the edges were somewhat flat. In the past, every year when Shen Xian returned to the capital, he would bring some animal skins that were hunted in the northwest region for old Shen Furen, and that was something that could not be bought in the capital. Now that Shen Xian no longer sent animal skins, old Shen Furen could only use the old goods. And Rongjing Tang was no longer as exquisite and luxurious as it was in the past, and even the decorations on the partitions were much lesser. In the beginning, Shen Xian was endlessly rewarded by the emperor, and even the entire Shen residence lived comfortably, but now without Shen Xian's help, Shen Roqiu was in charge of the housekeeping, and the days were somewhat stretched. Number 3's family is getting more and more excessive. Old Shen Furen drank a mouthful of ginseng tea and her face almost wrinkled together. She said, "Seeing that winter is coming, yesterday she went to find a tailor to make a fur cloak for me, but it was also pushing and pulling. This family's money is all in her own pocket." The maid behind carefully massaged old Shen Furen's shoulders and lowered her head without speaking. Now old Shen Furen's temper was becoming more and more temperamental. Ever since Shen Yuanbo died of smallpox a year ago, old Shen Furen would often lose her temper. Shen Yuanbo's premature death was an unspeakable pain for the Shen family. A year ago there were a number of people who were infected with smallpox in the Ding capital, and even though it was finally controlled, the spread of the epidemic was stopped and it did not cause a greater impact. But in the end there were still some who died, and unfortunately Shin Yuanbo was one of them. In the second household of the Shin family, Shin Gui originally had 2 sons, and Shin Yuan had already died under the executioner's knife. Originally there was still Shin Yuanbo to rely on, but once Shin Yuanbo died, Shin Gui went crazy and Ren Wanyun hung herself in the courtyard after Shin Yuanbo died. After Ren Wanyun's death, Shin Yuanbo started to crazily take in concubines and bring women into the room, but there was no movement for a year and a half. Afterwards old Shin Furen finally felt that something was not right and found a physician to take a look at Shin Gui. The physician said that Shin Gui had taken an infertility medicine and injured the roots of his offspring, so it was impossible for him to have any offspring in this lifetime. Old Shin Furen fainted after hearing it, and Shin Gui was also silly. After Shin Gui investigated, he ended up finding the dead Ren Wanyun. Ren Wanyun had once drugged Shin Gui with the intention to protect Shin Yuanbo's D-son position, but who knew that Shin Yuanbo's life was destined to have such a calamity? With Ren Wanyun's death, naturally Shin Gui could not do anything to her. In the original second household, Shin Gui only had Shin Dongling left. Shin Dongling's status rose because of this, and Wan Yinyang changed and became the only person who gave birth to a child for Shin Gui. Ever since Shin Gui knew that he would not have any descendants in this lifetime, he no longer had the heart to advance in his career. There was not even a person to carry on the family line, so what was the point of earning a mountain of gold and silver? Spending the entire day in debauchery, it was very lively. It was impossible for the second household to give birth to any offspring, thus old Shin Furen could only turn her gaze towards the third household Shin Wan. Shin Wan was not forced to take the infertility medicine, but Qin Rochio had trapped Shin Wan's heart to death. Even the 2 tong fang that old Shin Furen stuffed into Shin Wan in the early years were only decorations in the third household. Chapter 483. Old Shin Furen said, "Not only is the housekeeping a mess, she is also easily jealous. Saying that she is a noble young lady raised by a scholarly family, one do not know where did she learn the lowly ways of a small family and behave in a lowly manner. Not thinking of spreading branches and leaves for one's husband, and only know how to use foxy methods. Now that the third household does not have a D-son, one do not know what kind of intentions she has." Zhang Mama smiled. Old Furen need not be angry. Currently third master still does not know the good of other young ladies. Third master is very affectionate, and after a few days when those newly bought young ladies arrive, old Furen will send both of them to third master. They are all at the age of flowers and jade, so third master will naturally know the good of them. Old Shin Furen sent people to buy Yangzhou skinny horses. For a person like Shin Wan, one feared that an empty beauty would not be able to win over Shin Wan's heart. Qin Rochio also relied on her poetic and picturesque skills to make Shin Wan look at her in a different light. Those Yangzhou skinny horses were trained since young and were proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. Their looks were top-notch, and there was no male that did not love them. Old Shin Furen did not believe that Shin Wan was after all a man and would not be greedy. No matter how good Qin Rochio was, she was also old. "All of them make me angry," old Shin Furen said unhappily. One do not know where did Sister Chio learn to be like her mother, to have a very high attitude. She had mentioned so many families and all of them were wealthy and well off, but she did not fancy any of them. Could it be that she still wants to marry a prince? Zhang Mama frowned. Old Shin Furen's habit of speaking without any filter had not changed at all. She smiled apologetically. Second young lady is born well, and one fear that third master also have a decision in his heart and want to keep second young lady in a good family. Staying will become enmity. Old Shin Furen snorted coldly. Just wait and see. I want to see what kind of marriage third master's family can find for Sister Chio. In Chio Shui Yuan, Qin Rochio pressed her forehead. Her personal maid Shi Qing said, "Madam, your servant has gone to Rongjing Tang to inquire. Lao Fu really did find several thin Yangzhou horses for San Leoi, and in a few days they will be delivered to the mansion." "Madam, old madam is slapping your face." Qin Rochio closed her eyes and fiercely swept all the books on the table onto the floor. A series of pai li pa long sounds shocked the maids in the room, and they did not dare to make a sound. Even though Qin Rochio was still as gentle and considerate as before in front of Shin Wan, but the servants could clearly feel that third foreign Qin Rochio's temper had become fiercer in these 2 years. Most likely it was because she was in charge of the public finances and needed to balance the money between the various households, and old Shin Furen liked to be extravagant, so Qin Rochio did not reduce her own money. In the past, she didn't need to eat the food of the mortal world, so she could naturally live a life of self-cultivation. Now that she was entangled with worldly affairs, she felt that every day was a mess. Of course, the most important thing was that he had no children. She said coldly, "This old fart buying a skinny horse for his son? He really has no sense of shame." If Shenwan was present, his jaw would probably drop. The gentle and graceful person, whose voice was always like a gentle breeze and drizzling rain, actually spoke so harshly. Hua Yi said, "Madam's temper is too good. If this goes on, sooner or later old foreign will stuff people into master's room." Chen Rochio took a breath and turned to look at the two maids, Shi Qing and Hua Yi. These were the personal maids that she had promoted, and now they were at the right age of 18 or 19. They were like plump fruits and had a honey-like aura from head to toe. This kind of dainty beauty. Her lips hooked up and said, "Old foreign is really muddle-headed. If she really wants to stuff women into our courtyard, why go outside to look for those dirty people? One's background is not clear and one is not afraid of spoiling the family's reputation. It is better to find some clean and obedient ones from the side. One can be at ease when using them and also feel comfortable when serving. I look at both of you and think that it is not bad." Chapter 484. Although her words were gentle, her eyes were very sharp. The two maids jumped in fright and quickly knelt down, saying, "We don't dare. We only want to serve Madam wholeheartedly. We don't dare to have any other thoughts." Chen Rochio looked down at them for a while, and the two maids were so scared that their legs were trembling. She then lightly said, "Get up. Since you are not willing, I will not force you." Many thanks to foreign. The two maids trembled as they stood up and their hearts sighed in relief at the same time. Chen Rochio looked gentle on the outside and treated people kindly, but as Chen Rochio's personal maids, they had seen Chen Rochio's methods. In fact, there were a few good-looking maids that rushed to stick to Shenwan. Even though Shenwan did not show much interest, he did not reject them too much. These few maids were later punished by Chen Rochio with a reason. Not only did they decline, they also implicated the entire family. Shi Qing and Hua Yi were very clear in their hearts that Chen Rochio was an extremely jealous person and her methods were ruthless. If one really had a relationship with Shenwan, one feared that one would die until not even bones would be left. Chen Rochio sighed, "One can only blame me for not having the ability to give birth to a son for master. If I was able to give birth to a son, it would not be such a situation now." Shi Qing and Hua Yi did not dare to speak casually, after all children were the pain in Chen Rochio's heart. Chen Rochio muttered, "Now that the Shen residence has declined to such a state, there is not even a son among the younger generation. Even if there was one in the second household, they are all dead now. Now I am envious of Luo Shuiyan. She has children but no parents-in-law. Shen Xen treats her like a jewel and does not even have a Tong Fong. It really makes one jealous." Thinking of yesterday at the tribute banquet, Shen Miao was in the limelight. Looking at Shen Yu again, it was obvious that her looks and talents were much higher than Shen Miao, but because of the declining reputation of the Shen family, she could not even find a good husband. Not to mention Shen Yu's yearning for Prince Ding. There was a trace of unwillingness in Chen Rochio's heart. She had been competitive all her life, but now she was trampled by the vulgar daughter of a military general that she looked down upon. At this moment, an old maid suddenly came in from outside and said, "Madam, someone is looking for old Madam outside the mansion's entrance," but was stopped by Madam's servant. "Madam." He said that he came to seek refuge with the Shen family. When Chen Rochio heard it, she frowned and thought that it was old Shen Foreign's relatives who were unrelated to her that came over. The Jing clan was gone, but there were still these strange people. His expression immediately turned cold and he said, "Since you're here to ask for money, give them 2 silver ingots and send them away. This mansion can't afford to have idle people. Don't let any Tom, Dick, or Harry in." "No." The manservant scratched his head and said, "Madam, that person doesn't look like she's here to take advantage of us. She said that she's the daughter of an old friend of the general. Something happened to her family and she's desperate to seek help." "Old General Shin?" Chen Rochio thought for a moment before standing up and said, "Bring her to the side room. I will go and meet her." When Shen Miao returned to the residence from Feng Xian pawnshop, it was still very early. When she entered the room, she locked herself in and one did not know what she was thinking about. When it was close to evening, Luo Tan returned. Luo Tan bought some jewelry and generously gave some to Shen Miao, Biao youngest sister. "Today we went to the jewelry shops. The jewelry shops in the Ding capital are very big. Young lady Feng and I also picked some for you. One do not know if you like it. You take it first and later when you want to go out we can go shopping again." She actually had a look of wanting to continue. Shen Miao turned her head and said yes. After Luo Tan left, she looked at the half-box of jewelry and thought about how much money could be pawned. Chapter 485. Shin Xan and entourage came back not long after Luo Tan and everyone ate dinner together. Shin Xan and Luo Shuiyan seemed to be in a good mood, probably because the matters in the officialdom were very smooth. Only Shin Miao seemed to be slightly embarrassed. Luo Ling noticed it and said, "Younger Biao's sister looks somewhat unwell." "What happened?" Shin Xiu put down his chopsticks. "Sister, what's wrong?" Shin Miao was surprised for a moment, and when she saw everyone at the table staring at her, she smiled. "Nothing much. It is just that one had just returned to the capital from the Shaochun city and feels somewhat not used to it. Just stay for a few days." Shin Xiu smiled and said, "What's there to not be used to? If little sister isn't used to it, I can bring little sister to stroll from the east to the west of the city, and from the south to the north when I'm free in a few days. Little sister will get used to it after walking a few more times. Cousin Xiu, bring me along too." Luo Tan hurriedly said, "I can also protect little cousin's sister." "Nonsense." Luo Shuiyan said, "If your younger sister really go around the Ding capital with you, one fear that she would be exhausted. The Ding capital is so big, what if something happens?" She glared at Shin Xan, wanting Shin Xan to help. Shin Xan laughed and said, "It's fine as long as the children are happy. Brat, if you are going to bring your younger sisters out to play, then bring your father's troops along. Whoever dares to cause trouble, beat them to death. Don't be afraid." Luo Shuiyan was so angry that she pinched him. The husband and wife quarreled with each other, but they seemed to be very close. Shin Xan was awe-inspiring outside, but when he returned home, he listened to Luo Shuiyan's every word. Shin Miao was originally smiling as she watched, but as she watched, one did not know what she was thinking about, and her expression gradually turned gloomy. She quickly lowered her head so that the surrounding people would not notice that there was something wrong with her expression. Luo Ling, who was beside her paying attention to her every move, paused slightly and lowered his head thoughtfully. After the meal, they chatted for a while in the hall before going back to their respective rooms. Shin Miao prepared to return to her own courtyard as Luo Tan's courtyard was in front of Shin Miao, so she skipped back to her room first. When they reached Shin Miao's courtyard, Shin Miao prepared to enter but was stopped by Luo Ling. "Cousin, wait." Shin Miao turned her head and looked at him. "What is the matter with older brother Ling?" Luo Ling hesitated for a moment before finally taking out a square thing from his sleeves. He said warmly, "When I went out with my cousin today, I happened to see a shop selling this outside. I saw that there were quite a lot of people buying it, so I bought one. I heard that cousin's sister often dreams at night. This thing has been soaked in spices and has the effect of concentrating. If cousin's sister doesn't mind, please accept it." Shin Miao was slightly surprised and looked up at the young man in front of her. Luo Ling was born with good looks. Even though he could not be compared to Shin Xiu's bravery and was not as handsome as Xie Jingxing, and even Ji Yushu looked more delicate and cute than him, but that kind of warmth that came from the heart made one feel comfortable. Among the younger generation of the Luo family, Luo Ling was the most outstanding one. Not only was he the most steady, but he was able to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the family and was sincere. In the night, one seemed to be able to see Luo Ling's slightly red face. He said uncomfortably, "If my cousin doesn't like it." Shin Miao took the things from Luo Ling's hands lightly and smiled. "How can I bear to reject older Biao brother's kind intentions?" "Thank you, older Biao brother." Luo Ling smiled gently. "It is good that you like it." His eyes were gentle and his words were filled with concern. It was a very comfortable attitude, and if it was an ordinary female, not to say that they were tempted, they would have a very good impression of the person in front. But Shin Miao took a step back and looked at him. "If there is nothing else, I will return to the room first." There was a flash of disappointment in Luo Ling's eyes, but he quickly covered it up. "One will not disturb younger Biao's sister." He turned and left. Chapter 486. Shin Miao looked at Luo Ling's back as he left and quietly watched for a while. She was not an inexperienced young female who did not know about matters. Even if she did not enjoy the tenderness and honeyed feelings between men and women with Fu Xiu-yi, she had after all stayed in the palace for so many years. Luo Ling was a good person, and she was too selfish to pull such a good person into her life that was filled with schemes and schemes. Even though Luo Ling was a very good person, the Luo family treated her well, thus she could not repay kindness with enmity. She turned around and returned to her own room. After washing up, Jingzhi and Guyu withdrew and Shin Miao sat in front of the table and spread out the things that Luo Ling gave her. It was a handkerchief, and coincidentally it was a double-sided embroidered handkerchief. In the Ding capital, The handkerchief embroidered on the top was the most difficult to find, and one thought that Luo Ling had spent a lot of money to buy this handkerchief. There was a white crane embroidered on it, and it was in line with his character that had no desires, and it emitted a faint fragrance that made one's mind feel at ease. Shen Miao looked at it for a long time. The lines on the handkerchief were obviously from Lu Ying's hands. Lu Ying's craftsmanship was one of the best in the Ding capital, and in addition this was a double-sided embroidery that was rarely seen in Mingqi. It seemed that Lu Ying was living well. As Shen Miao looked at it, her depressed mood became better because of the person that she met in the rain today. She felt somewhat tired, so she took off her outer robe and only wore her inner clothes. She walked to the couch and sat down. Just as she was about to take off her inner clothes to rest, she heard a light laugh. Wait. Shen Miao's hands paused, and when she turned her head back, her raging anger could not be concealed at all. She looked at a certain person who came in uninvited and said word by word, Xia Jing. Xing. That person entered the room and closed the window, leisurely and contented as if it was his own backyard. This time he did not wear a mask, and a handsome and beautiful face was exposed under the light, making one's life seductive, but Shen Miao only wanted to drag him out and behead him. Under the heavens, only you can call me Xiao Zi. Xia Jing. Xing casually pulled a chair over and sat down not far from Shen Miao's couch. He smiled lightly. In the world, there is only you who have this honor. He was tall, and when he sat down he was actually taller than Shen Miao by quite a bit. He really didn't want to relax his imposing manner at all. Shen Miao looked at him coldly. Prince Rue is very idle every day and is very familiar with the route from Yanqing Lane to here. It's simple. Xia Jing. Xing propped up his chin. I have bought all the residences from Yanqing Lane to here. Now the residence that you are staying in next to is also my courtyard. Since we are distant relatives and good neighbors, this prince came to pay a visit. Shen Miao sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though the Yanqing Lane was close to the Shen mansion, there was still some distance. Xia Jing. Xing bought all the residences from the Yanqing Lane to the Shen mansion. Didn't that mean that more than half of the southern part of the city was his own courtyard? The courtyard next to the Shen mansion was also bought by Xia Jing. Xing. Even if Xia Jing. Xing had money, he would not spend it like this. Did he bring the treasury of the Great Liang with him? He squandered money like dirt. Did Emperor Yonglu of the Great Liang know about it? When she saw the smile on Xia Jing. Xing's face, Shen Miao was so angry. Xia Jing. Xing was so shameless to say that he was distant relatives and good neighbors, but who would choose to visit their neighbors in the middle of the night? Without an invitation, he came uninvited. Was the imperial family of the Great Liang so unruly? You do not look very happy. Xia Jing. Xing looked at her with interest. If there is any difficulty, you can tell older brother. Prince Rue's identity can still help on account of old acquaintance. Shen Miao rolled her eyes at him. She was getting more and more unclear of what Xia Jing. Xing wanted to do. Xia Jing. Xing's words reminded her. Thinking of the words that she said to Ji Yu Shu at the Feng Xian pawn shop, Shen Miao suddenly had some thoughts and deliberately asked, Xia Jing. Xing, what do you think about Madame Feng of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage? Chapter 487. Madame Feng of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage was Xia Changwu's and Xia Changchao's birth mother. At that time Princess Yu Qing's death was more or less related to Madame Feng. Everyone knew that Princess Yu Qing was something that Xia Jing. Xing could not mention, but Shen Miao mentioned it. Xia Jing. Xing looked at her with a faint smile. Do you want to trick me? Will you tell me? There is no harm in telling you. Xia Jing. Xing lazily said, In my eyes, you are worse than an ant. Shen Miao looked at him. Why did you not kill her for revenge? Xia Jing. Xing narrowed his eyes and stared at Shen Miao for a while before suddenly laughing. His voice was like the peach blossom wine that was buried in the spring and dug out in the winter. It was mellow like the spring breeze that made one intoxicated, but also like the biting cold of winter that made one awake. He said, Shen Miao, are you worried that Shen Xian will become the second Xia Ding? Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Correct? After a pause she said, If I was in your position, I would think of all ways to take revenge. Only by killing Madame Feng and then killing her two sons will I be able to take revenge. Only then will I not have lived in vain. She said it coldly, as if she didn't feel how ruthless her words were. When Xia Jing. Xing heard this, he wasn't surprised and only laughed as if he was laughing at her naivety. Xia Jing. Xing said, Not killing Madame Feng is because of disdain and fear of trouble. Xia Ding and Princess Yu Qing have nothing to do with me, so why should I take revenge? Shen Miao was surprised. Xia Ding and Xia Jing. Xing were not father and son. Shen Miao heard it from Xia Jing. Xing before and did not feel surprised. But how come Princess Yu Qing did not have any relationship with Xia Jing. Xing? The blood flowing in Xie Jingxing's body did not belong to Xie Ding and Princess Yuqing, so how did he become the D son of the Xie family? Shen Miao's heart moved as she thought of something and asked Xie Jingxing, then Princess Yuqing's son, dead? Xie Jingxing said plainly, he died when he was born. He had died when he was born, but after that there was no news of him at all. It seemed that Xie Jingxing had already been stuffed over at that time and no one found out about it. Princess Yuqing herself might not even know about it. If Xie Ding's son was alive, he would not live past the age of 3 before dying. Xie Jingxing said indifferently, because of me, Madame Fang did not dare to do it. Because his smile was somewhat sinister. The people who were sent here would mysteriously disappear. Shen Miao was suddenly enlightened. She had said before that Madame Fang was able to force Princess Yuqing into such a sorry state and even withered like a flower at the end. She must be someone with means and ambition. How would such a person be able to live in seclusion and live so peacefully and even let Xie Jingxing grow up safe and sound? As it turned out, it was a bad plan. The people they sent out would always mysteriously disappear. Madame Fang herself probably felt that it was strange, so she settled for the next best thing. As for why those people would disappear, since Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui of the Liang dynasty, there would be capable people around him. It should be more than enough to deal with Madame Fang. Some of the things that she didn't understand before suddenly became clear, and she forgot about those annoying things from before. Xie Jingxing looked down at her and said, you need not worry. Shen Xian and Xie Ding are different. Shen Miao said, I am also different from you. Xie Jingxing was slightly startled and heard Shen Miao saying, you are disdainful and there is no need. But I am different. If there is someone like Madame Fang who shakes my family, I will spare no effort to make her suffer the consequences of her own actions. If there is someone like Madame Fang who harbors evil intentions and attempts to destroy it, I will tear her to pieces inside and out and drag her to a mass grave to feed the dogs. Finishing her words, she lowered her head, but her eyes were filled with other emotions. But she felt her head sink as Xie Jingxing's hand pressed on her head and said, if there is such a person, just tell me. Distant relatives and good neighbors, I will kill him for you and not leave any future troubles. Shen Miao shook off his hand and Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. His expression was undisciplined and his words had a joking tone, as if he was saying it casually, but his pair of eyes seemed to be serious. If Xie Jingxing wanted to kill someone, it was indeed an easy matter to kill someone of Madame Fang's level. Shen Miao said, I can also do this kind of thing like killing. It is not a good move to take action yourself until the last moment. Xie Jingxing said, if you really feel apologetic, it is alright to give me something as a reward. Shen Miao said sarcastically, Your Highness Prince Rui is a precious gold and jade. I cannot afford to pay for an invitation. Xie Jingxing smiled, I will give you 20%. He stood up and walked to the front of the table. Just now Shen Miao had spread out the handkerchief that Luo Ling gave her. Xie Jingxing casually picked it up and sniffed it before raising his eyebrows. Even though the fragrance is poor, this prince's dogs have not been sleeping well recently. It is not bad to make do with it. Not waiting for Shen Miao to speak, Xie Jingxing kept the handkerchief into his sleeves. This is considered as a reward. Chapter 488. After the tribute banquet, the Ding capital was still lively. Because of welcoming the nobles from the great Liang and Qin country, the streets were much more bustling than usual. No matter when, the imperial family of Ming-Chi hoped to be able to have a flourishing appearance in front of other countries. In the Xin residence, the servants in Qiushui Yuan were talking about a new topic. What is the background of the new young lady in the residence? Is it worth third foreign to treat her in such a good manner? This year's new tea leaves were first brewed for that young lady. Could it be a noble person in the residence? An old woman wearing a green gown whispered, heard that this young lady's father and old general were very close in the past, and at that time even blocked a knife for old general and almost lost his life. A young maid quickly covered her mouth and said in surprise, no wonder. Being benevolent to old general is the same as being benevolent to the Xin family. No wonder she is treated as a guest of honor. It is said that she is here to seek shelter. Most likely something happened in the family. Looking at third foreign's appearance, it seems that she wants to take good care of this young lady. What care? Currently the lives of the people in the residence are stretched to make ends meet, and there is still a freeloader. It is better to send her away as soon as possible. When the words were said, the surroundings were silent. Now the Xin residence looked good on the surface, but the people inside were well aware that ever since Xin Xian's branch was split out, the money was much tighter, and even the monthly salary of the servants had reduced by a lot. As such, even if it was a great noble, the servants would not be happy if she came over to freeload. One do not know why third foreign is so harsh to us on normal days, but this time she is so generous to that young lady. Someone said in puzzlement. In Qiu Shui Yuan, Ren Wanyun was sitting in the room at the moment and pushed the teacup in front of her to the female opposite her and smiled. Newly produced tea leaves Chuer Jian. Young lady Qing, have a taste. The female sitting opposite her was wearing an emerald green embroidered long dress. There wasn't any fine embroidery on the long dress. This kind of dress was very simple and the color was very picky. If one didn't wear it well, they would look like a country girl. However, when worn by the woman in front of him, it was very comfortable and pleasing to the eye. This woman looked to be in her early 20s. Her clothes and hair accessories were also very simple. She looked very graceful and gentle. Most importantly, she had a strong scholarly air about her. With one look, one could tell that she was a girl raised in a scholarly family. Just by looking at her, one could tell that she was well educated. Qin Roqiu had always disdained that martial artists liked to be genteel, and it was the same for humans. Seeing this female in front of her, she had a feeling of mutual appreciation and was more polite. When this female saw Qin Roqiu's enthusiasm, she did not delay and picked up the teacup to take a sip before saying with a smile, "The tea is very light but mellow, the tea leaves are scattered but the smell is thick. Foreign's tea making is also outstanding. Miss Ziqing also understands the way of tea." Qin Roqiu's smile deepened. "The way of tea is the best, but nowadays there are very few young ladies like you who understand the way of tea. The cool breeze from my 2 armpits makes me want to go to Penglai." The woman smiled. "Madam is right, tea ceremony is the best. But foreign should not make fun of me. I am currently 26, how can I be considered as a young lady?" 26. Qin Roqiu exclaimed, looking at young lady Ziqing's appearance. "I thought that she was 18 or 19. But it is also good. Even though one has the appearance of 18 or 19, one has the bearing of a 20-something-year-old. It is really rare to see such magnanimity and calmness." The green-clad female in front of her was the one who came over to borrow the autumn wind yesterday. Her name was Chang Ziqing. Her father, Chang Hu, was once old General Shin's subordinate, and at that time he blocked a knife for old General Shin on the battlefield, injuring his body, and from then on he could no longer go to the battlefield. Chang Hu's entire family was supported by Chang Hu alone, and old General Shin felt guilty in his heart, thus he had been secretly taking out money for relief. At that time Chang Ziqing was still young, but Shin Xan was already at the age of getting married. Old General Shin even joked that he wanted Chang Ziqing to be his daughter-in-law. It was just that before seeing Shin Xan marry, old General Shin passed away. Because no one knew that old General Shin was secretly helping Chang Hu's family. After that, the Chang family and the Shin family no longer had any contact. Chapter 489. One did not think that the Chang family would come knocking at this time. A flash of worry appeared in Chang Ziqing's eyes. This time one's heart is very apologetic to suddenly disturb, to give the Shin family such trouble. She looked at Qin Roqiu. "Ziqing knows that the request is sudden, and if foreign feels inconvenient, Ziqing will leave now." Even though it was so, the moment she lowered her eyes, she could not help but bite her lips. Qin Roqiu affectionately pulled her hands. "What is young lady Ziqing saying? Since your father saved my father-in-law's life, your Chang family is our Shin family's benefactor." Moreover, old General and the Chang family's friendship was that of brothers who had gone through life and death together. "We are all one family. Since we are all one family, seeing that you have difficulties, we cannot just stand by and watch." She patted Chang Ziqing's hands. "Young lady Ziqing only care about staying in our Shin family. Tomorrow I will bring you to see old Tai Tai, but old Tai Tai's body is not well and her temper is not good. One fear that you have to be more considerate." Chang Ziqing repeatedly said that she did not dare. Her attitude was natural and polite, not bashful but not overly familiar, making it easy for others to have a good impression of her. Even Qin Roqiu, who was a cautious and vigilant person, would smile and talk to Chang Ziqing. Chang Ziqing's family lived in the Lu province. The reason why she suddenly came to the Shin residence was indeed because she had met with trouble. Chang Hu had passed away a few years ago, and the Chang family only had Chang Ziqing and her mother. Chang Foreign was bedridden all year round and finally succumbed to a serious illness a few days ago. After Chang Foreign was buried, there was a son of an official in the Lu province who wanted to snatch Chang Ziqing back to the residence as a concubine. Chang Ziqing was forced into a corner and almost hung herself with a white silk, but was saved by her own wet nurse. The wet nurse then told Chang Ziqing that perhaps Chang Hu's old friend, old General Shen could save her once. Chang Zai-Ching had seen old General Shen when she was young and vaguely remembered that he was a very forthright and magnanimous soldier. She really could not think of any other way out, thus she gathered enough money to travel to the Ding capital. She just came to the Shen residence and coincidentally met Qin Roqiu. After Qin Roqiu inquired about the cause and effect, she settled Qin Roqiu down. Qin Roqiu smiled as she looked at Chang Zai-Ching. Young lady Zai-Ching is from a water town like the Lu province, and the Ding capital is not comparable to the Lu province. One do not know if the food is to one's liking. Are you used to living in the West Courtyard? Foreign is too polite. Chang Zai-Ching replied with a smile. Foreign's care is very thorough. The West Courtyard was also very considerate. But she was a little puzzled. The West Courtyard is so big, is it usually empty? After saying that, he felt that he was being a little rude. He smiled and said, "It is a little rude to ask like this. I hope madam will not blame me. I treat you as one of my own. What's there to blame?" Qin Roqiu smiled. "One will not hide it from you. You know that in our residence there are actually 3 households. One think that you have heard of the formidable great general. It is the first household of our Shin family. It was just that 2 years ago there was some misunderstanding in the residence and the first household moved out. Master and I wanted to explain, but eldest brother and eldest Sa had gone to the Shaochun city and had just returned recently. We want to explain, but this misunderstanding is too deep." As Qin Roqiu spoke, there was a helpless look on her face. She shook her head and said, "I don't know what to do." Chang Zai-Ching was startled. According to Furin's words, that western courtyard was originally the place where eldest brother's family stayed. Qin Roqiu said. Chang Zai-Ching was suddenly enlightened. Seeing Qin Roqiu's somewhat sad look, she advised, Furin need not take it to heart. In this world, blood is thicker than water. Since it is a misunderstanding, it will eventually be solved, not to mention that it is a family. After a long time, even if Furin did not say it, one think that great General Shin would also feel that these matters are not worth worrying about. Chapter 490. Qin Roqiu smiled and said, "I know all these principles, but after hearing young lady Qing's words, one's heart is much more relieved." She looked at Chang Zai-Ching. "It would be good if everyone in the Shin residence were as penetrating as you. You are so knowledgeable. In the future, if there is nothing, one must consult Yue. This child is usually held in the palm of our hands and one fear that she is spoiled. It is good to have such an intelligent person like you to teach." Furin's words are too serious. Chang Zai-Ching followed up with a smile. "Yue is well educated and intelligent. I have not seen such an intelligent young lady in the Lu province. One think that she is one of the best in the Ding capital. A female should be like this, erudite and multi-talented, thus one would have a different look." This compliment that did not reveal any traces made Qin Roqiu's heart feel extremely comfortable. She chatted more and more warmly with Chang Zai-Ching and only allowed Chang Zai-Ching to return when it was almost noon. After Chang Zai-Ching left, Shi Qing carefully asked while wiping the table, "Does Furin really want to keep that young lady Qing?" She hesitated for a moment before reminding, "Now that the residence's expenditure is getting bigger, one fear that old Tai Tai would not be happy if she knew." Old Shin Furin was becoming more and more stingy, and if she knew that Chang Zai-Ching came to the Shin residence and the Shin residence had to spend money to raise an idle person, naturally her heart would be extremely dissatisfied. So Qin Roqiu previously told Chang Zai-Ching that old Shin Furin's temper was not good recently and hoped that she would be more tolerant. What does that short-sighted old woman know? Qin Roqiu's face was filled with disdain, unable to accomplish anything and more than spoil things. How would she be able to see the future? Could it be that Furin feels that this young lady Qing still has some use? Hua Yi's mind was active and knew his Furin's temperament well. If it was 2 years ago, Qin Roqiu would also be willing to play the role of a kind and charitable fairy to gain a good reputation, but now that there was no money and she could not even take care of herself, it was somewhat strange to go and help others. Speech and mannerisms are not as short-sighted as an ordinary female. Good looks and a gentle face, it is rare that her temperament is also gentle. With this kind of intelligence, even if placed in the residence, she would be one of the top characters. It is fine if she does not have the ambition, but once she has the ambition within 5 years, this woman will definitely achieve something. Qin Roqiu smiled. The place that she was born in was filled with scheming by females every day. Qin Roqiu's mother was one of the most powerful, and Qin Roqiu saw her mother's shadow in Chang Zao-Qing. Even now that Chang Zao-Qing was still so young, one fear that her future achievements would be even more outstanding. But what can such a powerful person do? Huai was puzzled. Could it be that Madame wants to form a good relationship? When Miss Qing achieves meteoric success one day and climbs up to a higher branch, then report to Madame. Qin Roqiu smiled when she heard it, such an intelligent person with a lively mind. I have observed his speech. He looks docile on the surface, but in fact he is proud and arrogant. How would he be willing to submit to others? If you really climb up the tree, don't expect anything in return. She looks down on others. Then Madame, I cannot bear to give such an outstanding person to others. Qin Roqiu looked out of the window. One should not let one's fertile water flow into one's field. A good knife should be used on the blade's edge. But even I feel that I would not be able to fight against such a powerful female. One do not know that person. How many rounds can he last? At the other end, Chang Zhaoqing had returned to the western courtyard. The western courtyard that Shin Xian's family used to live in was now a lot more empty. Originally there were a number of servants in the western courtyard, but because Shin Xian called his personal guards over to train the soldiers, it was always very lively. Afterwards, after Shin Xian's family moved away, the servants in the western courtyard were all dismissed by Qin Roqiu to reduce expenses. Without the soldiers practicing martial arts every day, the huge west courtyard became more and more empty and deserted. Chapter 491. Chang Zaiqing's wet nurse, Zhao Mama, saw that Chang Zaiqing had returned and quickly came up to help Chang Zaiqing take off the cloak and said worriedly, "Young lady, how was the discussion with Third Shin Foreign today?" It was Zhao Mama's idea to let Chang Zaiqing enter the capital to seek help from the Shin family. As if she did not think of a way, then Chang Zaiqing really had no other way to go. But the Shin family and the Chang family had not been in contact for so many years, and people's hearts were fickle. Originally old General Shin was willing to take care of the Chang family, but now that old General Shin was not around, who knew how the Shin family would treat Chang Zaiqing? Chang Zaiqing rubbed her forehead and sat down on the soft couch in the room. Third Shin Foreign is very enthusiastic and agreed for us to stay for a while. Even if those people came to the Ding capital, one think that they would not dare to provoke the Shin family. Granny Zhao patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. She said, Amit Ba. It turns out that Master said that everyone in the Shin family has the heart of a Buddha. I was worried about young Miss and was afraid that the Shin family would not help. Now it seems that I can rest assured. Mama is thinking too much. Chang Zaiqing sneered and her face revealed a look of disdain. When is there a free lunch in this world? Even when old General Shin took care of the Chang family, it was also because his father had blocked a knife for him that year. In this world, there would not be people who would treat others well for no reason. Third Shin Foreign is this enthusiastic because she sees that I am somewhat useful. Zhao Mama was surprised and looked at Chang Zaiqing. Young lady's meaning is that Third Shin Foreign is not a good person? What should we do? Don't worry, Nanny. Chang Zaiqing comforted her, but there was a chill in her eyes. Third Shin Foreign has a request of me, but how would I not have a need of her? Although I don't know what she's planning, but she'll find a way. But Granny Zhao still felt uneasy. Do not worry, Momo. Chang Zaiqing smiled. No matter how difficult the matter was, we have come through and come to this day. Seeing that there is a way to survive, what is there for me to be afraid of? Since the Shin family was a springboard, he naturally had to make good use of it. Third Shin Foreign wants to use me, but I also use her. Zhao Mama looked at Chang Zaiqing and finally nodded her head. This old servant only think of young ladies' good. Whatever young lady says will be what it is. The Ding capital was the capital of Ming Qi. Thus every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, and the most expensive place in the Ding capital, other than the palace, was Yanqing Lane. Yanqing Alley was located in the south of the city. Not far from it were the most prosperous restaurants and shops. Facing the river, the scenery was exceptional. The reason why the land in Yanqing Lane was so expensive, other than being the residence of the nobles of the previous dynasty, was because there was once a famous immortal Taoist who looked at the feng shui here. He said that this place was extremely expensive and had the dragon qi. Other than the nobles, no one could suppress the dragon qi here, and only the venerable of the world could stay here. The imperial family of Ming Qi was not in the southern part of the city, thus they could not carry out a large-scale reconstruction of the palace as the commoners would complain and the treasury would not be able to take out so much money. But who would dare to live in a place with dragon qi? Would the emperor find it disrespectful if he stayed here? Even those who had the guts could not come up with such a large amount of silver. Yanqing Alley had been empty for many years because of this. But at this moment someone finally moved into Yenqing Lane. It was not someone else but the guest from Qin country in Great Liang. The Qin country's crown prince came and the Great Liang's prince of first rank came. They were all legitimate nobles. Money was not a problem. Speaking of which, there was no place more suitable for them to stay in than Yenqing Lane. They could not stay in the palace as if that was the case. One feared that Emperor Wenhui would not be able to sleep peacefully. One's own palace was occupied by people from other countries, so how could one allow others to sleep soundly on the side couch? It would not be pleasant. At this moment in the innermost residence of Yenqing Lane, there were soldiers guarding it. Even though it was a residence, it was more like a smaller palace. The decorations were luxurious and the area was huge. Even those high-ranking officials' residences would need a few of them to be able to form such a residence. Chapter 492. This residence was the place where Prince Rui lived. There were several residences in Yenqing Lane and the crown prince of the Qin country chose the residence that was closest to the outside while the innermost one was chosen by Prince Rui. One did not know if it was because he wanted to deliberately keep a distance from the Qin country. No matter what, this residence was the most expensive one in the Yenqing Lane and was twice as expensive as the crown prince's residence. That Prince Rui did not even blink his eyes as he settled down, which made others think that the rumor that the Great Liang's treasury was filled with gold was not a lie. Prince Rui of the Great Liang was also very arrogant. On the first day he stayed here, he let people take down the signboard at the entrance and replaced it with a golden signboard that said, "Residence of Prince Rui." This made one feel angry and funny at the same time. This Prince Rui of the Great Liang ran to Mingqi to buy a residence and even put up such a signboard. Could it be that he really wanted to stay here? At this moment in a courtyard of Prince Rui's residence, a snow-white thing was flopping around on the ground. This thing is born light but it is too fierce. It is so small and it is already so fierce. Why would Master think of keeping it? A yellow-clad female was squatting on the ground and holding a wooden stick to tease the snow-white fur ball in front of her. Upon closer inspection one saw that the thing was furry like a doll. Upon closer inspection, it had a pair of clear eyes that were rolling around and had a somewhat clever appearance. At this moment it was using its claws to scratch the female's hand and even changed its teeth to bite. This thing was none other than a young tiger cub. It was probably born not too long ago and was very tender. Its fur was a rare light color, and the patterns on its fur were not very clear. From afar it looked like a snow-white white tiger. It was indeed lovable. That female teased it and suddenly made a hissing sound as she threw the wooden stick in her hand and said angrily, "This fellow looks so docile but it is actually a master that bites. It is really painful to bite it. See if I do not tear you up later." "Forget it." Another female voice sounded. It was a slightly charming woman in a light red dress. She looked at the ball on the ground and said, "This was personally brought back by Master. Nightingale, I'm afraid that before you can touch it, Master will tear it apart." The woman called Nightingale stood up, and the white tiger cub happily grabbed the corner of her skirt. It turned its head and gave her a big bite. It kept dragging her back but was kicked away by Nightingale. She walked to the red-dressed female's side. "Huolong, is Master crazy? Why raise a tiger out of nowhere? This tiger looks pretty and cute but it's so cruel. What if it hurts someone in the future?" Huolong shrugged her shoulders. "It's probably because his temper suddenly came. This white tiger has been eating and sleeping ever since it was brought back. It's only been a few days since it opened its eyes and it already knows how to bite people. In the future, if Master goes back with a tiger, I'm afraid His Majesty will have a headache when he finds out." Nightingale said with a bitter face, "Why are the two of you slacking off here?" A male's stern voice sounded. The two females looked back and saw a middle-aged man striding over. He walked to the side of the cage and picked up the bowl on top of the cage to take a look. He looked at Nightingale and Huolong with displeasure. "Let the two of you feed and only know how to slack off." Nightingale said angrily, "We came out from the tower prison and thought that following Master would be a good job. Who knew that we are here to feed the tiger? We are the people of the MOU army and not those nannies that are breastfeeding. How can one not do anything and only know how to play with the tiger? Just do the things that Master has instructed and do not ask so much." Tai squatted down and took the bowl to feed the white tiger on the ground. The cooked meat was chopped into minced meat and mixed with some eggs. That white tiger went forward to sniff and ate happily. Tai rubbed the white tiger's head and the human and tiger had a harmonious appearance. He was a big and burly man, but to sit together with a petite tiger, such a warm scene was somewhat strange. Chapter 493. The tiger ate half a bowl and refused to eat any more. Tai kept the bowl and turned to see Hualong and Nightingale bowing behind him. Master? Xie Jingxing waved his hand and walked out of the room. The two people behind him were Ji Yushu and Gao Yang. When Ji Yushu saw that white tiger, his eyes stared. What is this? Dog. Tai Yi's body trembled. Gao Yang said, Are you stupid? They are clearly spores. Spores, Tai Yi said. Young Master Ji, young Master Gao, it's white tiger. His tone was also protesting for the white tiger. Unfortunately, the tiger cub could not understand the human language. After eating its fill, it chased its tail under the sun like a cat. Tiger? Ji Yushu looked at Xie Jingxing. Third older brother, are you all right? Why are you even raising a tiger now? Ying said in a crisp voice, Young Master Ji, this is what Master saw on the way to the Ding capital. There was a hunter who wanted to sell the tiger cub's skin at a high price and was saved by our master. Gao Yang glanced at Xie Jingxing. When did you become so kind-hearted? It doesn't seem like something you would do. Xie Jingxing did not bother about the two of them. He was wearing a dark purple robe with gold-embroidered vines and was still incomparably gorgeous. However, no matter how gorgeous the clothes were, they could not compare to his outstanding appearance. He slowly walked to the side of the white tiger cub. When the white tiger cub saw a person suddenly appear in front of it, without saying a word, it opened its claws and pounced forward, biting him. However, he was lifted up by the back of his neck. Xie Jingxing lifted the white tiger cub into the air. The cub seemed to be very uncomfortable with such a position, and it kept flapping its legs. Xie Jingxing ignored it and looked at it thoughtfully. Don't tell me you are going to kill this tiger now? Nightingale made a beheading gesture towards Hualong. Hualong shivered and shook her head. In the end, Xie Jingxing looked at it for a while before pushing aside the white tiger cub's legs. He smiled and said, It's a female tiger. Everyone, so what if it's a tigress? Could it be that Xie Jingxing intended to bring it back to the Great Liang to be Rui Wangfei? The tiger cub howled, but because it was too young, its voice was soft. Xie Jingxing placed it on his chest and held it in his bosom. The white tiger cub lay on his chest and raised its head to howl at him non-stop. However, it seemed like it was acting coquettishly. It was actually very pitiful and cute. Xie Jingxing stretched out his finger and pulled the white tiger's whiskers to tease her. Nightingale was startled and cried out, Master, don't. That white tiger hates people touching its whiskers the most. It will bite. Before he finished speaking, the white tiger bit Xie Jingxing's finger. Hualong and Tai also jumped in shock. Ji Yushu's hands covered his mouth and had an exaggerated look of horror while Gao Yang was rejoicing in others' misfortune. Xie Jingxing calmly stared at the white tiger. After staring for a while, the white tiger suddenly felt a little guilty. It loosened its mouth and turned its head to look elsewhere. There was a shallow bite mark on Xie Jingxing's finger, and it was rather obvious. They have the same eyes and the same temper. Even his habit of biting people is the same. Xie Jingxing looked down at the white tiger in his bosom but was not angry. Instead he reached out to touch the white tiger's head. The white tiger seemed to be somewhat sleepy as it yawned and stretched its body but did not struggle. It allowed Xie Jingxing to ravage its head and did not do anything as it laid on Xie Jingxing's chest to rest. The sun lazily shone down its golden rays. The purple-clothed man was gorgeous and handsome. He lowered his eyes to look at the white tiger in his arms. His long eyelashes were slightly curled, but it could not hide his gentle and loving gaze. That white tiger's fur was extremely beautiful as it obediently lay in his bosom. One human and one tiger were as beautiful as a painting, completely different from the strange feeling when Tai Yi was feeding the white tiger. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and looked at the tiger cub that was about to fall asleep. Still lack a name. If it is so similar, in the future I will call you Jiao Jiao. Ji Yushu clapped his hands. What kind of damn name is this? Third older brother, you want to give this tigress such a delicate name? It is too strange. He protested, change the name. Tiger Tyrant, Iron Hammer or Biao older brother are all good. Gao Yang had an unbearable look as he covered his eyes with a fan. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at Ji Yushu and continued to tickle the tiger cub's chin unhurriedly. Shut up. This is mine Jiao Jiao. Chapter 494. On the second day, Shen Miao received an invitation. This invitation was not from others, but from the Qin country's Princess Mingyan, inviting her to the residence in Yanqing Lane for a gathering. This invitation was sent over by the servants in the gatehouse, and was handed over to Shen Miao by Guyu. Initially she thought that it was sent by Feng and Ning to invite her to play, but one did not think that upon opening it, it was actually from Princess Ming and. Jingzhe said worriedly, "This must be fake. How could it be Princess Ming An's invitation? Without rhyme or reason, Princess Ming An and young lady do not have any friendship. Could it be that someone is impersonating?" Guyu shook her head. "There is the princess's seal on it, so it is not fake." She looked at Shen Miao and said, "Previously this Princess Ming An was disgraced because of young lady at the tribute banquet, and one fear that she is looking for an opportunity to take revenge. It is better for young lady to reject, as it would be bad if that Princess Ming An has any bad ideas." Jingzhe also nodded her head repeatedly. Right. It is better to inform Master and Furin about this matter and let Master and Furin decide." Shen Miao thought for a moment before shaking her head. "Do not tell others about this matter. With father and mother's temperament, they would definitely use unyielding means. Now that the relationship between the Qin country and Ming Qi is sensitive, it would be alright if it was only a fight between me and Princess Mingyan, but if it involves father and mother, one fear that it would involve the court's affairs, and it would not be good to outsmart oneself." "Not telling Master and Furin?" Jingzhe asked. "Could it be that young lady wants to receive this invitation?" Jingzhe's heart was naturally not willing. To be together with a princess with ill intentions, and this was not her own territory. If Shen Miao were to suffer, then she would not be able to save her in time. "No harm," Shen Miao said, "since Princess Mingyan had sent me an invitation and the invitation is in my hands, inviting me to her residence. If something really happened to me, Princess Mingyan would not be able to get away with it. If the Crown Prince of Qin knew about it, he would also stop it. She wouldn't dare to do anything to me. It's just a little trick. I'm not afraid." "But," Guyu is still very worried. "No buts, just do it. The date of the invitation is 2 days later and I will make a trip there. It is fine as long as outsiders do not know about it." After pausing, she said again, "I will let Mo Qing follow along. The invitation is in the residence, and if something really happens, let Bai Lu and Shuangjiang take the invitation to my eldest brother." Jingzhe and Guyu were extremely unwilling in their hearts, but they could only helplessly agree to Shen Miao's words. Coincidentally, in the outermost residence of the Yanqing Lane, where the imperial family of the Qin country were temporarily staying, Princess Mingyan received a reply from the servant. She opened it and looked at it carefully. Suddenly she became angry. She threw the invitation on the table and coldly said, "You have some guts. What are you angry about?" A male pushed the door and entered, and when he saw Princess Mingyan's appearance he frowned and asked. When Princess Mingyan saw the person approaching, she stood up and walked over, and handed the invitation on the table to the other and said in a spoiled manner, "Crown Prince older brother, look at that Shen Miao. I sent her an invitation and she actually replied and agreed to keep the appointment. She's really not afraid of death." "You sent her an invitation. If she didn't accept it, she would be too daring. You won't be happy if I accept it. Don't be so unreasonable." Huang Fu Hao, who was well aware of Princess Mingyan's temperament, did not go along with her words, but poured cold water on Princess Mingyan's head. "Crown Prince older brother." Princess Mingyan stomped her feet. "Is she helping me or helping her? That day at the tribute banquet she made me make a fool of myself and deliberately made me bite an apple. It was clearly to deliberately embarrass me, and let our Qin country lose face. Now you not only do not help the Qin country to regain face, but also blame me. What kind of logic is this? Even if one were to return to the Qin country to see Imperial Father, it would not be reasonable." Chapter 495. Huang Fu Hao coldly glanced at Princess Mingyan, and when he thought of the matter at the tribute banquet, his face suddenly sunk. Even though Princess Mingyan's words were not entirely true, after all it was Princess Mingyan's initiative to compete with Shen Miao in archery. But when Shen Miao let Princess Mingyan bite the apple to compete, it was somewhat overbearing. Even in the last few sentences, there was a hint of mockery. He was not sure if Shen Miao did it on purpose, but if this matter were to spread back to the Qin state, the Qin emperor would definitely blame him. He did not know why, but Huang Fu Hao felt that Shen Miao was very special. That Princess Mingyan's bow was something that other people would need to familiarize themselves with for a few days before they could use it, but she was so proficient that it was as if she had pulled it thousands of times. Occasionally, when he glanced over, his gaze seemed to carry a hint of hostility. Now was not the time for the Ming Qi and the Qin country to be enemies, so why would Shen Miao have hostility towards him and Princess Mingyan? Before this they did not know each other, and it was only because of Princess Mingyan's difficulties? That Shen Miao's vengeance was too heavy. Seeing that Huang Fuhao did not speak and was thinking about something, Princess Ming'an's eyes suddenly widened in surprise. Crown Prince older brother, could it be that you are bewitched by her? What is so good about that little slut? Do not forget that before this, the entire world knew that she was obsessed with Prince Ding of Mingqi and was a complete idiot. She did it so calmly because someone was guiding her from behind. Don't be bewitched by her. Huang Fuhao impatiently waved his hand. What are you talking about? As for you, this time in the Qin country, do not forget the things that Imperial Father had instructed you to do. I do not care what you want to do to Shen Miao, but you cannot make a move in this residence. You can do whatever you want in other places as long as you do not pull anything over. One Shen Miao was not a big deal, but now the Emperor of Mingqi needed to rely on Shen Xian. If Shen Miao was to be touched, Shen Xian would definitely fall out and the alliance with Mingqi would be destroyed. You better look at the bigger picture. Princess Ming'an was showered with such a warning, but her face eased up. It was just that when she looked at it seriously, the anger in her eyes became more intense. She smiled. Don't worry, brother Crown Prince. I will not find trouble for us. I invited her over just to see what kind of person Shen Miao is. If they really want to fight, they will not use the name of our Qin state. Did you forget that when we were kids, our favorite thing to do was watch dogs bite each other? There are so many dogs in Mingqi, it is not difficult to find one to work for us. Huang Fuhao also smiled. As long as you know your limits. The sky gradually darkened. In the Shen residence of the Ding capital, in the original western courtyard, there was a small lamp lit and Qin Roqiu and Chang Zhaoqing were talking. Qin Roqiu smiled. This handkerchief is embroidered with poems and it is really nice to look at. Even the ants of the scholar's mansion couldn't compare to Miss Qing's poetry. Originally, I didn't know what ingenious was, but now that I see Miss Qing, I completely understand. Cang Zaiqing pursed her lips and smiled, foreign overpraises. It's just that Zaiqing can't help much here and I've been living and eating for free all day, so I feel bad about it, so I can only embroider some handkerchiefs. It's not worth much money, so I hope foreign doesn't mind. I do not dislike it. Qin Roqiu looked at the handkerchief and carefully folded it up and kept it in her sleeves before saying with a smile, I have to hide such a good thing. Otherwise if Yuera saw it, she would have to take it away from me. Whatever she sees from me, she would always pester me to take it over. This handkerchief is so exquisite that I cannot bear to give it to her. Cang Zaiqing smiled. It is good that foreign does not mind. If second young lady likes it, I will embroider another one for her. Then the relationship is good. Qin Roqiu also smiled. This way one would not fear that Yuera would take away one's heart. She smiled as she looked at Cang Zaiqing and asked, speaking of which, about the words that I said to Miss Qing previously, how about Miss Qing consider it? Chapter 496. Previously when Qin Roqiu was chatting with Chang Zhaoqing, she mentioned about Shen Xian's matter. Now Cang Zaiqing had seen everyone else in the Shen residence, other than the first household's family that moved out. Qin Roqiu suggested that since it was the daughter of old General Shen's old subordinate and Chang who was old General Shen's benefactor, naturally Shen Xian would not reject Chang Zaiqing. Moreover, Shen Xian was old General Shen's eldest son, so it was reasonable for Cang Zaiqing to pay a visit. Hearing that, Cang Zaiqing hesitated for a moment before shaking her head with a smile. It is already very apologetic for me to come over and disturb foreign. How would one dare to disturb General Shen? Moreover, Zaiqing's trip to the Ding capital this time was just to avoid that official's son, and once the matter was over, Zaiqing would leave. It is not good to let General Shen know about this matter. I say that everything about young Lady Qing is good, just that she is too polite. Qin Roqiu pretended to be angry. The relationship between the Chang family and the Shen family is so good that you are one family with us. I heard that when Miss Qing was young, Big Brother had seen you before. You are Big Brother's younger sister, so why would Big Brother feel embarrassed? If you really do not go and see eldest brother in the Ding capital, one fear that eldest brother would be angry if he knew about it. Chang Zaiqing did not speak and Qin Roqiu patted her hands. Moreover, since you want to hide from that family in the Lu province, it is more convenient for eldest brother. There were many soldiers in their residence and the guards were tight. Even if that family in the Lu province chased all the way to the Ding capital, they would not dare to act rashly because of eldest brother. Since I treat you as one of my own, I will tell you clearly that Big Brother's place is the place that can truly protect you. Mentioning that family in the Lu province, Chang Zaiqing's expression changed and her face started to show some uncertain expression. Qin Roqiu said, Young Lady Qing, Just treat it as going to your eldest brother's residence as a guest for a period of time. What is there to worry about? Third foreign do not know. Song Zai-Ching forced a smile. After all, too much time has passed and it is unknown if General Shin still remembers Zai-Ching. Moreover, there is still Shin foreign, fifth young miss and eldest young master. I'm afraid that it would be too much of a disturbance if someone were to move in without any reason. Don't worry about that. Chin Rochio smiled when she heard it. That eldest saw of mine has the best character. Because she is a heroine from a military family, she is straightforward and honest. She does not have any ulterior motives and is a kind person. After knowing about your matter, she could not help but sympathize. Besides, eldest brother doesn't have any other women at home. It's hard for eldest sister to find someone to talk to. If she sees you, I'm sure she'll treat you very well. As for eldest brother and fifth sister, they are both sensible children. It's even more impossible for them to have any disputes with you. Chen Rochio saw Chang Zai-Ching's wavering expression and smiled. How about this? If young lady Qing feels that it is not bad, I will get someone to help young lady Qing write an invitation and send it over. It will not mention our Shin residence and use young lady Qing's name so that it would not cause any misunderstanding. Young lady Qing, why don't you pay a visit to Big Brother first and see what his attitude is? If you think it's inappropriate, you can just turn back and not go. Chang Zai-Ching thought for a long time and finally nodded her head with determination and smiled gratefully at Chin Rochio. Third foreign, consider everything thoroughly. Zai-Ching thanks third foreign. See that you are getting more and more polite. Chin Rochio smiled as she stood up. It is already late, so I will not disturb your rest. Tomorrow I will write an invitation and get someone to send it over. Young lady Qing need not care about anything. With such a clear and intelligent person like you, no one would not like you. One fear that when eldest brother finds you, he would be happy to have another younger sister like you. Chang Zai-Ching smiled and said that she did not dare. After sending off Chen Rochio, Zhao Mama came over to clean the table. Just now Chen Rochio and Chang Zai-Ching's conversation was heard by Zhao Mama. Zhao Mama asked, young lady, that third Shin foreign is fine, why would she mention the matter of General Shen? Could it be that she wants to chase young lady out of the residence? Chapter 497. Song Zai-Ching sneered. Originally I did not understand what third Shin foreign wanted me to do, but now I understand. Third Shin foreign's calculations are very good, to want to use me to deal with others. Zhao Mama was shocked. Young lady? What does third Shin foreign want young lady to do? Song Zai-Ching sat down in front of the table and her expression changed unpredictably. She was not a fool, and it was not that she could not hear the hint in Chin Rochio's words. She said that only Shin Xian could protect her safety, and if she could enter the Shin residence for a lifetime, then she need not worry about those people from the Lu province coming to the door. One said that Luo Shuiyan came from a military family and her personality was straightforward, without any schemes. It was that Luo Shuiyan was stupid and easy to deal with. As for the lack of women in Shin Xian's inner courtyard, the hint was even more obvious. If Zhang Zai-Ching could enter, other than dealing with Luo Shuiyan who was not that smart, there was no other worries. She said, since third Shin foreign regards me so highly, I should first go and take a look at what is going on. Young lady is going to General Shin residence? Zhao Mama was surprised for a moment, knowing that third Shin foreign has a bad idea. Young lady still want to go? It is not a bad idea if used well. Song Zai-Ching waved her hands. Living in the Shin residence is not a long-term plan. I have to plan for my own future. There is no harm. I am only going to take a look, and if there is anything wrong, naturally I will not jump in. Zhao Mama looked at her carefully. If one feels that it is not bad. Song Zai-Ching smiled faintly. Third Shin foreign can be considered to have met my intentions. The night spread into the Ding capital and every household lit up their lights, making the scene of the brightly lit and prosperous. However, other than the palace, the most prosperous section of the road was still the southern part of the city. The restaurants were filled with singing and dancing, the sounds of drinking, the sounds of females and males laughing, and the sounds of bamboo and Chinese harp intertwined together, making it exceptionally moving. In the residence of Prince Rue, the lights were done extremely well. Even the lanterns were embroidered with gold thread, and once it was lit in the night, it would be eye-catching. Some passers-by drooled, wanting to steal one and remove the golden thread to return the money. However, when they saw the stern and ferocious-looking guards at the door, they could only suppress the guts in their hearts and leave with their tails between their legs. That was something from the residence of Prince Rue of the Great Liang. Who dared to steal it? It was quiet in the mansion as if there was no one there. At the end of the path there was a huge courtyard. In the courtyard there was a beautifully renovated pavilion. The pavilion was adjacent to a clear pond. The water of the pond was emerald green, and the moonlight was alluring. If it was summer, this place would have the unique charm of the wind lotus in the courtyard. Unfortunately, the weather was gradually approaching the beginning of winter. Sitting in the pavilion, one would feel a rustling chill. At this moment there was a person sitting in the pavilion. The wide flowing gold and purple color almost covered the long bench in the pavilion. It was a very handsome young man. Under the gentle moonlight, his usual valiance gradually became gentler, and his gorgeous facial features became gentler. He lowered his head and played with the tiger cub in his arms. The tiger cub was forcefully pressed on his chest and turned its head in discomfort, trying to turn its body to bite the hand that was scratching its head. Unfortunately, one did not know if it was because its neck was too short or the action of the person who was pressing it was too hard. It failed several times. But this tiger cub was not discouraged and continued to bite on the purple-clad youth's sleeves without getting tired. Xie Jingxing pulled out his sleeves from the tiger cub's mouth and stared at the area that was mostly wet with the tiger cub's saliva. After looking for a long time, he flicked the tiger cub's head. The tiger cub gave an "awut" sound and finally successfully turned its body and used its claws to play with Xie Jingxing's finger. Chapter 498. In the distant bushes, two heads popped out. Nightingale stared foolishly at the human and tiger in the pavilion, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. One knew that Xie Jingxing had a serious obsession with cleanliness, and normally he did not like animals and even people close to him would not dare to touch his things. Now that his sleeves were covered with saliva, he was actually this calm. She said, "Has Master recently gone crazy? Why is he hugging a tiger all day even when eating and sleeping? I heard that he hugged it even when bathing today. Could it be that he really wants to bring this tiger back to the Great Liang to be Rui Wangfei?" Seeing that the person beside her did not move, Nightingale turned her head. "Huolong, you also say a few words." Huolong held her face with both hands and looked at the people in the pavilion. "Master is really good to that tiger cub. You see how gentle his eyes are when he looks at the tiger. Master is so peerless in his generation. If it was me, I would rather turn into a tiger so that I can sleep and bathe with Master." When Huolong talked about these things, she was calm and did not have any shyness. At the end she sighed and shook her head. "Unfortunately, humans are not as good as tigers. I see that you are possessed." Nightingale despised her. In the pavilion, Xie Jingxing rubbed the tiger cub's head until it was almost pressed against his chest. The tiger cub struggled with all its might, and when it was struggling, it accidentally pounced onto Xie Jingxing's neck and took the opportunity to lick Xie Jingxing's face. "You even secretly kissed me." Xie Jingxing chuckled and lifted the tiger cub up by its neck. He looked at the tiger cub struggling in the air with evil interest and raised his eyebrows. "Humans and tigers are the same." The tiger cub bared its fangs and brandished its claws at him. Xie Jingxing kissed its head. "Be good?" In the bushes, Nightingale leaned forward. "Master has gone crazy. I want to go and kill that tiger," Huolong said with a murderous look. Just at this moment, Tai Yi's figure suddenly appeared in the pavilion. Xie Jingxing placed the tiger cub back into his embrace and asked, "What is the matter?" Replying to Master, "Today Princess Mingyan sent an invitation to 5th Shin young lady." "Oh?" Xie Jingxing's fingers that were scratching the tiger cub slightly paused. "Princess Mingyan invites 5th Shin young lady to the residence for a chat." 5th Shin young lady accepted the invitation and it will be 2 days later. Tai Yi bowed and replied, "Got it." Xie Jingxing waved his hand. Tai Yi glanced at the tiger cub in Xie Jingxing's arms and the corner of his mouth twitched. He turned around and retreated into the night. "You're quite daring." Xie Jingxing placed his finger in the tiger cub's mouth. The tiger cub had been eating, bathing, and sleeping with Xie Jingxing, so it seemed to have developed some familiarity with Xie Jingxing. It held his finger in its mouth but didn't really bite it. It was just playing with it. "Are you going?" Xie Jingxing asked. The white tiger cub howled and looked at him with sparkling eyes. "Think?" Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "I will listen to you." In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. This morning, Shen Miao also woke up early and Jingzhe and Guyu helped her to find clothes to wear. The weather was gradually entering the beginning of winter and Mingqi's winter always came especially early and it was especially cold. In the past few days, it rained continuously and Shen Miao's heavier clothes were damp and could not be found. Guyu took out a cloak from the bottom of the box and said, "This one is rather dry. Even though it is somewhat thick, it is very cold today, so it would not be awkward for young lady to wear it." Shen Miao looked at the cloak in Guyu's hands. It was a snow-white cloak and it was made from fox skin from top to bottom. It was the rare white fox skin and there was not a single strand of mixed-colored fur on it. Even after a few years, it was still as clean as new and it was obviously a good piece of leather. This cloak was the one that Shen Miao left the Ding capital with Shen Xan 2 years ago and stayed in a farmer's house. On the second day, there was an inexplicable additional cloak in the house. The farmer's house did not have this cloak and Shen Miao did not know where did this thing come from. Previously she was thinking of when to exchange it for money, but Shen Qiu strongly forbade it, saying that this white fox fur was hard to obtain and it was better to keep it for herself. Chapter 499. Even though it was kept, that cloak really did not fit. It was too big for Shen Miao to wear, so it was kept under the chest and was never taken out to wear. If it was not for Guyu digging it out from the chest today, Shen Miao almost forgot about it. She looked at the cloak and thought of something. Previously, when Xie Jingxing flipped through her bedroom at night, he mentioned that he had met her at a farmer's house 2 years ago, but she did not remember as she was drunk that day. Now thinking about it, this cloak should be left behind by Xie Jingxing. She could not remember anything about that night's matter and only knew that Xie Jingxing was talking nonsense, and her face turned a little red. Jingzhi and Guyu saw Shen Miao's somewhat uncomfortable look and looked at each other, not knowing what happened to Shen Miao. Jingzhi reminded, "Young lady?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and looked at the cloak in Guyu's hands before saying in a bad mood, "Find an opportunity to pawn it at the pawn shop." But eldest young master said that the skin is very good and does not let young lady pawn it? Guyu felt strange. No matter how good the skin is, one do not want it. Shen Miao said, "Send it to the Feng Xian pawn shop when you are done packing it." The Feng Xian pawn shop collects treasures all the time, so Manager Ji would definitely like this thing. Seeing Shen Miao's appearance, Guyu and Jingzhi dared not say anything more and shrugged their shoulders before continuing to look for other cloaks for Shen Miao. Finally he picked a lilac-colored brocade cloak with rabbit fur, and after helping Shen Miao to freshen up, he found an excuse to go out. Luo Tan was easy to send away as Shen Xan, and the rest would usually return in the evening from the Ministry of War, and without the eyes and ears of the Shen family, there was much more freedom now. Mo Qing once again acted as the carriage driver. Mo Qing was now Shen Qiu's people, but he would always help Shen Miao to handle matters. Most of the time, Shen Miao would not let Mo Qing tell others about her matters. Mo Qing looked more like Shen Miao's confidant. But Mo Qing was already used to his identity, and every time Shen Miao went out to handle matters, Mo Qing was already used to it. But today when Mo Qing knew the place that Shen Miao was going to, he was also shocked. It was actually the residence of the Crown Prince of the Qin country. Shen Miao's actions at the tribute banquet was spread throughout the Ding capital the next day, and naturally Mo Qing knew about it. That Princess Ming obviously came with ill intentions, and Mo Qing was somewhat worried, but Shen Miao had a well-thought-out look, so Mo Qing did not say anything. When they reached the residence of the Crown Prince of Qin, the guards outside saw the invitation in Shen Miao's hands and only let Shen Miao wait outside. They said that they would take the invitation to report to their master and would not return. After a long time, Jingzhi could not bear it any longer and said, "It has been almost an hour and these people still have not reported?" It was clear that the Qin princess was deliberately making things difficult for the young lady. Even if there is a heater in the carriage, it will still be very cold outside. If Miss gets sick from the cold, what will the princess say? Guyu also said, "This is really too much. Since one took the initiative to invite, then what is the meaning of leaving one outside the residence in the cold?" Usually, when people came to send invitations, they would at least welcome them into the mansion to wait. Even if the relatives of the imperial family had many rules, they shouldn't leave people hanging for more than an hour. Moreover, in the past hour, no one had come forward to greet him. Mo Qing said, "Young lady, it is better to return." Shen Miao shook her head, "Since one is already here, then one should wait. One must give enough face and not let the courtesy fall on the other's side." When she was in the Qin country, Princess Ming liked to treat people like this. In the cold of the 12th lunar month, she would use chatting as an excuse to let people wait in the icy cold garden early in the morning. One wait would be a few hours, and sometimes one would wait for an entire day without seeing anyone. Afterwards a maid would be sent over to say that there were some matters that one could not come. This meant that one had waited for a day in vain. Princess Ming An's methods were the same as always, superficial and shallow. In the past lifetime one could endure it, so what was an hour in this lifetime? In the residence of the Crown Prince of Qin, at this moment Princess Ming An was sitting in the room and the maid was adding silver charcoal to the brazier. Princess Ming An picked up the tea on the table and took a sip, but her expression was somewhat carefree. She asked the servant outside, "Has that cheap person left?" Replying to Your Highness. The servant said, "Fifth Shin young lady's horse carriage is still at the residence's entrance and had not left." A trace of unhappiness flashed on Princess Ming An's face, to actually be this patient. She originally thought that by leaving Shin Miao out to dry, the proud and arrogant young lady of an official's family would return to the residence in a fit of anger. After that, she would be able to find a reason to say that Shin Miao was disrespectful to her. But she did not expect that Shin Miao would be this calm. But she smiled. After waiting for so long, one think that one's patience is almost exhausted. It is not bad to change methods. Someone passed down Bengong's orders to invite Shin Miao in. Chapter 500. The residence that the Qin country's people lived in was probably renovated, and the layout was somewhat different from the Ming Qi's residence. When Shin Miao entered, she was aware that this residence in Yanqing Lane was renovated by the Qin country, as it had the same style as the Qin country's palace, which was extremely luxurious. When Shin Miao entered, she was aware that this residence in Yanqing Lane was renovated by the Qin country, as it had the same style as the Qin country's palace, which was extremely luxurious. At that time when Shin Miao first went to the Qin country, she was envious when she saw that the palace was renovated so beautifully. Now thinking about it, the imperial family of the Qin country's preferences were really not flattering. As to rush to show that there was money, it was a cliché. After being led by the maid to the garden, Shin Miao finally saw Princess Ming and Princess Ming An sat at a small stone table in the garden, and the stone table was covered with a silk handkerchief embroidered with butterflies. On top of it were a few plates of exquisite snacks and a pot of tea. Next to it was a small pond, and at this time of the year the pond water had not frozen, and there were many red carps shaking their heads and tails in the pond. A few maids were sitting at the side, carrying small bowls to feed the fishes. Shin Miao stood in front of Princess Ming An and bowed to Princess Ming An. Princess Ming An turned her head over. Among the three countries of Ming Qi, the Great Liang and the Qin country, it was an unquestionable fact that the Great Liang was the most powerful, and in comparison the Ming Qi and the Qin country were much inferior. However, when comparing the Ming Qi and the Qin country was slightly better than the Ming Qi, because the Qin country's military was stronger. Perhaps it was because of the imperial family of the Ming Qi. The Fu family wanted to take back the military power to the imperial family, and dared not let it go. Thus in these years, it was hard for the Ming Qi to produce any outstanding generals. For example, Shen Xian and Xie Ding. When these two people were not as good as they were in the past, the Ming Qi was unable to find other military families to replace their positions. Thus for this tribute banquet, Emperor Wen Hui hurriedly summoned Shen Xian back, so that he would not lose face in front of other countries. Perhaps the Qin country knew that they could not compare to the Great Liang, but they were above the Ming Qi, and the Qin country's people always had a sense of superiority in front of the Ming Qi people. This kind of feeling was very annoying. In Shin Miao's previous lifetime, when she went to the Qin country, it seemed that even a little palace maid in the Qin country's palace looked down on her. The royal family of the Qin kingdom did even more unseemly. It was as if by stepping on her dignity, one would be able to step on Ming Qi's dignity. At this moment, seeing Princess Ming An, some memories from the previous lifetime came flooding in. Bengong invited you over today and initially thought that you would not dare to come. One did not think that you actually came alone, and your guts are not small. Princess Ming An glanced at Shin Miao and her gaze suddenly became gloomy. Today she was wearing a gold-colored flower-washing gauze and a gold-plated red dress, and her makeup was also the best-looking linlang hairpin in the Qin country. But when she saw Shin Miao wearing a lilac-colored cloak and without any makeup, she paled in comparison. Princess Ming An was actually very delicate and beautiful, and was a typical female of the Qin country's imperial family. Being pampered with gold and jade, there was a special delicacy about her. There were many types of temperament, and Shin Miao's appearance was delicate and gentle, but her temperament was eye-catching. Her dignified appearance made her not have a trace of softness, as if she was a female that had sat on a high throne for many years, and was filled with an air of nobility. The princess must be joking. Shin Miao's expression did not change. The princess is a guest of the Ming Qi, and since Xin Miao was fortunate enough to be invited, how would one not keep the appointment? Jingzhi and Guyu stood behind Xin Miao, and Mo Qing was stopped by the guards at the door, but Xin Miao did not say anything. Xin Miao was very clear about Princess Ming An's temperament. Since Princess Ming An had sent an invitation today, it was impossible for her to do anything dangerous. It was nothing more than using some means to make her suffer. When Xin Miao came, she was already prepared, but the suffering was not for nothing. She would definitely exaggerate Princess Ming An's actions today by 10 times. Chapter 501. You have a glib mouth. Of course Bengong know that you have big guts, else you would not deliberately make Bengong look bad during the tribute banquet. Thinking of what happened during the tribute banquet, a trace of killing intent flashed in Princess Ming An's eyes. One had to know that she was the most favored princess of the Qin kingdom. Even in the Qin kingdom's royal family, everyone had to fear her. She did not expect that when she arrived at the Ming Qi that was inferior to the Qin country, she was led by Xin Miao to faint at the tribute banquet. Thinking that she would not have any face left, Princess Ming An could not wait to kill the person in front. If it was not for the fact that they were still in Ming Qi's territory and Huang Fu Hao's warning, Princess Ming An would have already let Xin Miao lose her life. She suddenly looked at Xin Miao and smiled. Bengong see that your archery skills are outstanding and feel that the Qin country's palace lacks a sister like you. Why not make a request to your emperor to let you follow Bengong back to the Qin country? Xin Miao almost laughed. In the past and present lifetime, this Princess Ming An seemed to be at odds with her, but these words seemed to have returned to the previous lifetime. When she was willing to go to the Qin country to be a hostage, Princess Ming An also said the same thing to Fu Xiuyi. She said, "Your Majesty need not worry. Since it is Ming Qi's Empress, the Qin country will naturally treat her well and is Bengong's good sister." In the end, in the Qin country, the humiliation she suffered was no less than when she was in Ming Qi. After Xin Miao returned to the Qin country, she was able to fight with Mei Furan in the inner palace for such a long time. Many things were due to the 5 years of experience in the Qin country, where she learned to endure and hide. If your highness has this intention, just tell his majesty. Xin Miao smiled without a care. If your majesty agrees, this official's daughter can only follow your princess highness to the Qin country. Princess Ming An wanted to ridicule and suppress Xin Miao, but did not think that Xin Miao would actually retort. Xin Miao was Xin Xian's precious daughter, and even if Emperor Wen Hui wanted to protect Xin Xian, he would not touch Xin Miao for the time being. She glared at Xin Miao. "You?" Xin Miao looked at her with a smile and did not speak. "Don't worry, it would be too unfair for you to go back like this." Princess Ming An coldly smiled and her eyes were filled with viciousness. "Why not enter my crown prince older brother's residence and be a concubine? Or become a side concubine? One think that the emperor of Ming Qi is also very willing." Xin Miao frowned slightly. If Ming Qi wanted to have a good relationship with the Qin country, a marriage was indeed a good method. If Princess Ming An really managed to persuade Huang Fu Hao, and Huang Fu Hao proposed to marry Xin Miao back to be a Sufei, Emperor Wen Hui would also agree. No matter how unwilling Xin Xian was, he could not go against the entire country. Seeing that Xin Miao was slightly absent-minded, Princess Ming An's lips hooked up into a sneer and suddenly gave a look to the maid beside Xin Miao. That maid suddenly stretched out her hand and pushed Xin Miao, who was standing at the side of the pond, into the pond. This time it was fierce and strong and Xin Miao was caught off guard and fell into the pond. Jingzhi and Guyu cried out in alarm, and when they wanted to come over to help, it was already too late. Xin Miao could almost feel the cold air from the water splashing on her clothes, but her lips were also ice cold. Princess Ming An's methods were nothing more than this. Since one was unable to really hurt her today, one must let Xin Miao suffer a bit. This kind of result was almost what Xin Miao could predict. Xin Miao fell into the water with a plop sound. She knew how to swim, and even though the water in early winter was cold, it was not to the extent that she could not move. But she heard another plop sound beside her, and at first she thought that she had heard wrongly. When she popped her head out, she saw that the water was also splashing, and that rolling golden color. If it was not Princess Ming An, who else could it be? Princess Ming An's screams almost pierced one's ears. She did not seem to know how to swim as she screamed, "Someone come! Someone come!" Chapter 502. Princess Ming An's maids also panicked when they saw this, and one after another went to look for bamboo poles to save people. Those who knew how to swim were all guards, but the guards were all males. Princess Mingyan was of noble birth, and one feared that if one were to touch her body, their heads would be seen the next day, thus no one came forward to save her. Moreover, the place where Princess Mingyan fell into the water was just too far away. Shen Miao was pushed into the pond and fell from the side of the pond, so the place where she fell was not far from the side of the pond. But Princess Mingyan was perfectly fine, but she actually fell directly into the middle of the pond, and even the bamboo poles could not reach her. Shen Miao looked at this comical look and actually felt that it was somewhat funny. But now was not the time to watch the show in the water, and when everyone was in a flurry, she was leisurely swimming towards the pond. When she swam to the edge of the pond, Jingzhi and Guyu were already pulling her up in a panic. Halfway through, one heard an angry shout, "What is going on here?" One saw two males walking in from outside the garden. One of them was wearing a golden robe and a jade crown on his head. His face was so gloomy that it seemed as though water was about to drip out, and destroyed his handsome appearance by 30%. The other person was wearing a golden purple robe, a black cloak, and a half-silver mask that covered his face. But it did not change his heroic appearance, and followed Huangfu Hao's footsteps unhurriedly. Replying to Your Highness, the princess has fallen into the water. Those servants quickly reported. Seeing the crowd of servants in a flurry, Huangfu Hao took a deep breath, and subconsciously looked at Prince Rui's expression. But Prince Rui was wearing a mask and the lips under the mask were slightly hooked, so who could see clearly what he was thinking at the moment. He shouted at the guards behind him in a deep voice, "Hurry up and go." That guard's expression stiffened, but he was helpless and flew towards the pond. Most likely he knew how to swim and had some martial arts skills, as he immediately fished the drenched Princess Mingyan to the shore. Princess Mingyan choked on a lot of water, and the first thing she did when she came ashore was to scream at Shen Miao, "This slut pushed me into the water. Crown Prince older brother, help me kill her." Princess Mingyan was also flustered and exasperated, that such words could be said in front of everyone. Huangfu Hao was shocked and opened his mouth to stop her. "Mingyan?" Princess Mingyan was surprised for a moment, and only then did she see that Prince Rui was still standing beside Huangfu Hao. She was startled, and then her face turned red with anger. To be in such a sorry state in front of such a peerless man, if there was a hole in the ground, Princess Mingyan could not wait to drill into it. And all of this was thanks to Shen Miao. Jingzhi could not hold back and retorted for Shen Miao, "Your Princess Highness words are unreasonable. It was obviously my young lady who fell into the water first, so how could she free her hands to push your Princess Highness? My young lady is not an immortal, so how would she have the ability to have 3 heads and 6 arms? Who do you think you are? Dare to speak to Bengong like this?" Princess Mingyan did not get angry but laughed instead. "Your meaning is that Bengong is slandering Shen Miao? Guards, capture this lowly servant girl who's spouting nonsense for this consort." Shen Miao smiled coldly and blocked Jingzhi behind her. "Your Princess Highness is a Qin country's people and Jingzhi is my people. This is Ming Qi, so since when can the Qin country's people behave atrociously in Ming Qi's land?" She used the words behave atrociously, and it could be said that she was not polite at all. Even Huangfu Hao could not help but take another look at her. "You are presumptuous," Princess Mingyan shouted. This official's daughter does not feel that she is presumptuous. Shen Miao's imposing manner was not weak at all. She was not the Empress Shen who swallowed insults and humiliation in the Qin country. Moreover, if one could not even protect a maid, then one would have lived in vain in this lifetime. For someone like Princess Mingyan who relied on her identity to behave atrociously, one did not even need to use one's brain to deal with her. Chapter 503. This was the residence of the Qin country, and Princess Mingyan's servants had already sent a cloak over to cover Princess Mingyan's drenched body. But Shen Miao did not. When she came, her lilac cloak was already drenched and almost stuck to her body. Even if Jingzhi and Guyu wanted to use their bodies to block her, it was not possible. Huangfu Hao stared at Shen Miao and was somewhat presumptuous. Just at this moment, one saw Prince Rui chuckling and suddenly took off his black cloak and lightly threw it on Shen Miao's body, covering Shen Miao tightly. This action could not help but make the surrounding people surprised for a moment. This Prince Rui of the Great Liang had always been a loner since he came to the Ding capital, and did not have any friendship with Ming Qi, and also did not deliberately make friends with the Qin country, but inexplicably helped Shen Miao out of trouble. Huangfu Hao's gaze towards Shen Miao was deep in thought, but Princess Mingyan was biting her lips in jealousy. Jingzhi and Guyu helped Shen Miao to stand up. Princess Mingyan could no longer hold back. It was obviously you who pushed Bengong down. If it was not you, how would Bengong fall into the lake without rhyme or reason? Could it be that it was my servants who pushed Bengong? Shen Miao smiled. Even though her hair was completely drenched, her calm and magnanimous expression was much more dignified compared to the flustered and exasperated Princess Mingyan. She said, this official's servant had already explained for this official's servant. This official's servant fell into the water first, so how could one push your Princess Highness? Perhaps it was your Princess Highness who accidentally slipped. Princess Mingyan angrily said, if Bengong slipped by herself, how could one fall into the middle of the pond? That would be a coincidence. Shen Miao said in an indifferent manner, this official's servant is also not a warrior with infinite strength, and really cannot push Princess to the middle of the pond. A chuckle suddenly escaped and everyone looked up to see that Prince Rui's lips hooking up. Even though he was smiling, one could not see the expression under the mask, making one feel somewhat unfathomable. Princess Mingyan clenched her teeth and looked towards Prince Rui. Since your highness is here, one is not a Ming-Chi person nor a Qin country person. May your highness come and preside over justice and see who is lying between Bengong and Shen Miao? When Huang Fu Hao wanted to stop Princess Mingyan, it was already too late. Huang Fu Hao's heart was filled with rage. Princess Mingyan was arrogant and willful, but did not have any brains. Even though he knew that Princess Mingyan was here for Shen Miao, he did not expect that Princess Mingyan would use such a stupid method. If it was not good, Shen Miao would use the trick of injuring herself to gain confidence, and Princess Mingyan would not end up well. What was even more coincidental was that Prince Rui of the Great Liang suddenly came over for a visit, and saw this chaotic scene. Huang Fu Hao simply wanted to strangle Princess Mingyan. Shen Miao's eyes hung down, but Princess Mingyan looked up at him with a face of hope. Huang Fu Hao's face was somewhat awkward and Prince Rui's lips hooked up. Why should this prince care about these trivial matters? Princess Mingyan was surprised for a moment and Shen Miao secretly rolled her eyes. Your residence is quite lively. One could not tell if Prince Rui's words were sarcasm, but that light tone suddenly made Huang Fu Hao unhappy. He glanced at Shen Miao, who was wearing Prince Rui's cloak, and suddenly smiled. Today was only a misunderstanding. One did not expect that young Lady Shen would be implicated because of this. Bengong will apologize to young Lady Shen on behalf of my younger sister, and hope that young Lady Shen would not take it to heart. Older Prince. Princess Mingyan did not expect that Huang Fu Hao would actually give in to Shen Miao, and her heart was anxious as she shouted out in dissatisfaction. But she was coldly glared at by Huang Fu Hao, and dared not make a sound, but the gaze that she looked at Shen Miao was filled with jealousy and hatred. Shen Miao looked at Huang Fu Hao and lightly said, since His Highness the Crown Prince has spoken, this official's daughter would not dare to disobey. These tolerant words were said reluctantly, as if it was very forced. This made the fire in Princess Mingyan's heart rise again. Huang Fu Hao was also startled and looked meaningfully at Shen Miao. Chapter 504. Shen Miao lowered her eyes and restrained the myriad of emotions in her eyes. Huang Fu Hao, this person on the surface looked magnanimous and polite, but in fact he was very ruthless. This kind of ruthlessness was different from Fu Xiuyi's ruthlessness and was something that could not be concealed. Initially when she was in the Qin country, there was one time when Huang Fu Hao was drunk and wanted to humiliate her. If it was not for Gu Yu who risked her life to protect her innocence, one feared that when she returned to the Ming-Chi palace, the first thing that awaited her was a piece of white silk. The imperial family of Ming-Chi would not allow an unchaste empress. Even so, because Gu Yu offended Huang Fu Hao used his guard sword to stab her to death. Shen Miao would never be able to forget that Huang Fu Hao's sword had pierced several holes in Gu Yu's body and blood kept flowing out, but Huang Fu Hao ordered people to throw Gu Yu's body into the wolf pack. She could not do anything. She had lost her dearest person in the Qin country and could not even collect Gu Yu's corpse. If one were to say that towards Princess Mingyan Shen Miao had some disgust, but towards Huang Fu Hao, it was a blood feud. She just didn't have a way to make Huang Fu Hao pay the price. Huang Fu Hao's gaze became more and more suspicious, and in the instant that Shen Miao's eyes closed, he seemed to have detected some kind of obvious emotion that made his body feel cold. He didn't understand what it was, but he instinctively wanted to find out. Just as she wanted to speak, Prince Rui suddenly moved sideways. His stature was extremely tall and straight, and the petite Shen Miao was almost unable to be seen when he blocked her. Today is not the right time to come. Prince Rui swept a glance at Huang Fu Hao and Princess Mingyan. It was obvious that one could not see his expression, but both of them felt that Prince Rui's eyes were somewhat cold. He continued, "Come back another day." Huang Fu Hao originally wanted to persuade a few words. The current situation was still unclear. No matter what, the Qin country did not want to be enemies with the Great Liang. If this represented that Prince Rui of the Great Liang would show a little bit of closeness to their Qin country, the Qin country would naturally be happy to see it. One thought that one would be able to get close to Prince Rui today, but one did not think that it would all be ruined by Princess Mingyan. He fiercely glared at Princess Mingyan and helplessly said, "It is Bengong's poor hospitality. When your highness comes again, Bengong will definitely entertain you with great hospitality." Prince Rui chuckled, but no one knew what it meant. He turned around and was about to leave, but suddenly stopped his footsteps and looked at Shin Miao with a smile that was not a smile. "Since young lady Shin is also drenched, it is better to return to the residence earlier. Are you willing to return with this prince?" Shin Miao took a deep breath and broke into a smile. "Many thanks to your highness, Prince Rui." Huang Fu Hao and Princess Mingyan watched as both of them brushed their sleeves and left. Princess Mingyan almost bit her lips until they broke. "Crown Prince older brother, that slut is seducing Prince Rui. She even pushed me into the water. I can't just let this go." "Shut up, idiot." Huang Fu Hao looked at her coldly and warned, "Ben Gong will let you off this time for today's matter. If there is a next time and you mess things up, when Imperial Father blames you, Ben Gong will not be able to protect you." Turning around, he flicked his sleeves and left. After being lectured by Huang Fu Hao, Princess Mingyan did not dare to retort, but her hatred towards Shin Miao deepened by another level. Especially when she saw the back view of both of them leaving, it made her heart feel as if it was being cut by a knife. She had always been willful and selfish, but with her beauty and golden branches and jade leaves, there was never a male that caught her eye. It was not easy to find a male that caught her eye, but he seemed to take care of Shin Miao. How could she endure it? Princess Mingyan clenched her fists and said hatefully, "Shin Miao, Ben Gong will definitely make you wish you were dead." Outside the residence in the Qin country, Shin Miao's horse carriage was still parked at the entrance. Seeing Shin Miao appearing with an unfamiliar male's cloak draped over her, and her hair dripping wet, Mo Qing suddenly became nervous. "Young lady." Chapter 505. No harm. Shin Miao waved her hands and said, "Return to the residence first." This prince helped young lady Shin, but young lady Shin did not even say a word of thanks. This is too heartless. Prince Rui crossed his arms and spoke unhurriedly, making Jingzhe and the rest surprised for a moment. Shin Miao looked at him coldly. "Is Prince Rui playing happily today?" "That depends on whether you are happy or not." He laughed. Even with a mask, Shin Miao could see the vile expression of this person in front of her. "Princess Mingyan falling into the water was done by you?" She leaned close to Xie Jingxing and whispered, "Why did you do that?" Xie Jingxing looked down at her. She was petite, and when Xie Jingxing wanted to whisper to her, he had to bend down slightly. When their eyes were at eye level, it seemed a little too intimate and could be considered as ambiguous. His voice was low and sweet with a slight teasing. "What thing is she to bully you?" After pausing, Xie Jingxing stared at Shin Miao and said, "Am I not your person? It is reasonable to help you." Shin Miao suddenly took a step back and distanced herself from him before saying indifferently, "Then many thanks to you." Thanking is not something that can be done with just words. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up. This prince needs to think about it. Shin Miao was too lazy to speak more with him and boarded the carriage without a second word. Mo Qing was worried that Shin Miao would catch a cold and rushed towards the Shin mansion without stopping, and very quickly disappeared from the alley. Looking at the distance where the carriage could no longer be seen, a tall male suddenly appeared behind Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing's eyes turned cold as he said, "Go check if Huang Fu Hao had ever been to the Ding capital before." The male bowed his head and left. Xie Jingxing turned his head and looked at the main doors of Prince Qin's residence. His lips hooked up, but there was a flash of coldness in his eyes. On the way back to the residence, Jingzhe and Guyu did not dare to speak. No one expected that Shin Miao would be so difficult when she went out today. This Princess Mingyan's guts was just too big. She even dared to push someone into the water in broad daylight. Jingzhe's eyes were red. At that critical moment, she did not care about the other party's identity. Now thinking about it, that person was after all the princess of the Qin country, and she was just a lowly servant. If the other party really wanted to do anything to her, Jingzhe herself would not be able to do anything. Only now did she remember that she was afraid. Shin Miao on the other hand was in a calm mood. She had long known that Princess Mingyan did not have good intentions, but because of the overall situation, even if no one came today when Princess Mingyan arrived, she would get people to fish her out of the water, and would not really take her life. One did not expect that a fiend would suddenly appear and push Princess Mingyan into the water. Naturally, this was Xie Jingxing's tricks. Xie Jingxing was lawless and had no regard for anyone, and even schemed against Princess Mingyan in front of Huang Fuhao. Perhaps when Huang Fuhao thought about it later, he would also realize that something was wrong. After all, Princess Mingyan fell to the middle of the pond, and if one did not have martial arts, how would one be able to do it? And the only outsider who knew martial arts was Xie Jingxing. Even if one did not know if it was done by Xie Jingxing, one would always have some suspicions. But Shen Miao's eyes slightly moved. Xie Jingxing's move made Princess Mingyan to be in such a sorry state, and it really made one feel refreshed. If there was no Xie Jingxing today, even if she was in the right, she would still suffer. Now that she was in the right, she would still suffer, but seeing that Princess Mingyan was beaten up, she felt that the suffering was worth it. Jingzhi and Guyu looked at Shen Miao with some worry, but one did not know what Shen Miao was thinking about, and the corner of her lips slightly rose as if she was somewhat happy. Both of them looked at each other and were somewhat at a loss. They did not know how Shen Miao would be happy after being pushed into the water by others. When they returned to the Shen mansion, because Shen Miao was dripping wet, she could only sneak in from the back door. Jingzhi quickly took a handkerchief to wipe Shen Miao's hair, and helped her change into a clean set of clothes. Guyu then instructed the kitchen to boil ginger tea. Shen Miao sat for a while before asking, "Why do I not see Bai Lu and Shuangjiang?" Before she left, she let Bai Lu and Shuangjiang stay in the residence to wait for news, but there was no one at the moment. Just as she was speaking, one saw Bai Lu returning from outside. When she saw Shen Miao, she was pleasantly surprised. "Young lady has finally returned." Just now Foreign asked this servant, "Where did young lady go, and why is one not back yet? What is the matter with mother?" Shen Miao finally managed to dry her hair and asked when she heard that. One heard that the daughter of old general's benefactor came knocking. Foreign is outside chatting with that young lady, and wanted young lady to go and take a look. Shen Miao's hand that was holding the handkerchief paused and her gaze turned sharp. "What is that person's name?" Bai Lu was surprised for a moment and felt that Shen Miao's gaze was somewhat cold, and subconsciously replied, "One heard that it is surnamed Chang." Chapter 506. Ever since Shen Xian's family returned to the capital, this was the first time someone visited the newly bought residence. Luo Shuiyan sat in the main room and was talking to a young female. When Shen Miao arrived, Luo Shuiyan was drinking tea with that female and one did not know what they were talking about, but Luo Shuiyan had a very happy appearance. Both of them were chatting happily and did not even discover that Shen Miao had arrived. It was Luo Tan who was sitting at the side picking up snacks to eat that warmly greeted her when she saw Shen Miao. "Biao, youngest sister, today there is a new snack with milk added. Do you want to try it?" Shen Miao smiled and shook her head before walking to Luo Shuiyan's side. Her eyes landed on that young female and asked, "Mother, this is..." That young female quickly stood up. She was wearing a pea-green robe and did not have any extra jewelry. There was only a wooden hairpin that was loosely inserted into her hair bun and there was a plain silver bracelet on her wrist. This could be considered a somewhat shabby attire, but there was a faint scholarly aura between this woman's brows. Although her appearance could only be considered beautiful, there was a kind of elegance that would not be belittled, and it was pleasing to the eye. "This is the daughter of your grandfather's benefactor, called Chang Zaiqing. Most likely Jiao Jiao had not seen her before." Luo Shuiyan smiled. "Younger sister Qing, this is our residence's young lady, Jiao Jiao." Shen Miao gently smiled and nodded her head. "Qingyi." Luo Shuiyan pulled Chang Zaiqing to sit down and let Shen Miao snuggle up to her as she said with a smile, "What Qingyi? Younger sister Qing is born so young and calling Qingyi is considered old. If younger sister Qing does not say your age, I would think that you are not much older than Jiao Jiao. Even if you go out like this, no one would say anything wrong if Jiao Jiao calls you older sister. Foreign must not make fun of me," Chang Zaiqing said with a smile. Luo Tan smiled as she looked at Shen Miao. "Biao, youngest sister, Qingyi has come to the Ding capital and in the future one can often come to the residence as a guest. One heard that she likes to play chess and read books. I do not understand those, but in the future you will have a playmate." Shen Miao smiled. Luo Tan had always been a straightforward person. Perhaps the Luo family's people were this sincere, like Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan who treated others warmly. Shen Miao raised her eyes to look at Chang Zhaoqing. Even so, it was not an easy thing to please Luo Shuiyan. Especially because the members of the Luo family were all military generals, and military generals and civil officials had never seen eye to eye. The more outspoken Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan were, the more impatient they were with those who only knew how to play with words. But in just half a day's time, Luo Shuiyan and Chang Zhaoqing addressed each other as sisters, and actually liked Chang Zhaoqing very much. Shen Miao's gaze became somewhat cold. Seeing that Shen Miao did not speak, Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao's hand and said, "Why is Jiao Jiao's hand so cold? Recently it is cold outside and it is better not to catch a cold." Jingzhi and Guyu lowered their heads uncomfortably at the back. Shen Miao returned to the residence to change her clothes and just finished drinking the ginger soup. Upon hearing that there was a guest, she rushed over and did not have a good rest. Luo Shuiyan did not know that something happened to Shen Miao at Princess Ming'an's place today, and both of them had a guilty conscience. It's winter these few days, so it's naturally very cold. In my hometown, there is a kind of medicinal pouch that is filled with some cold-repelling spices. When one sleeps at night, it is hung at the head of the bed so that it would be warm the next day. If fifth young lady does not mind, I will make a few and send them over. Chang Zhaoqing said with a smile. Younger sister Qing can even do this? Luo Shuiyan smiled. It is said that the females in the Lu province are clever and dexterous. I had never seen it before, but now seeing younger sister Qing one would know. Unlike the young ladies in our residence. She glanced at Luo Tan and Shen Miao and pretended to sigh helplessly, not to mention medicinal pouches, they do not even know how to embroider a handkerchief. Chapter 507. Shen Miao did not like to do needlework and only felt that it was a waste of time. Needless to say about Luo Tan, he clearly had the temperament of a male. Luo Tan pouted, "Youngest Gu, not to mention me and youngest Biao sister, aren't you the same?" Luo Shuiyan was at a loss for words. She glared at Luo Tan. "Is Aunt Qing from Liuzhou?" Shen Miao tilted her head to look at her and asked with a smile, "The Lu province is not near to the Ding capital. What is the purpose of coming to the Ding capital this time?" Chang Zhaoqing's face immediately showed some embarrassment and Luo Shuiyan quickly diverted the topic. "Nothing much, just came to the Ding capital to play for a few days." Shen Miao smiled. "Then where is Qingyi resting at now?" Chang Zhaoqing smiled. "Now he is resting in the Shen residence." Shen Miao lightly said, "Oh, it was originally resting at grandmother's place." She said, "Since Aunt Qing's father is grandfather's benefactor, I believe that grandmother will take good care of Aunt Qing." This is reassuring. Even though Luo Shuiyan felt that with old Shen Foran's temperament, she would not be that considerate towards Chang Zhaoqing, but Shen Miao's words made Luo Shuiyan's heart warm up a little. She said, "That's true." Chang Zhaoqing's smile slightly stiffened. But one heard Shen Miao saying, "Qingyi originally lived in the Lu province. I heard that the Lu province is very fun, but unfortunately I have never been there before. But when you were in Guangwentang, there was a classmate whose hometown was in the Lu province. Perhaps you two know each other." The Chang family is a small family. Chang Zhaoqing lowered her head and said, "One fear that fifth young lady's classmate do not know of the Chang family. No matter how small the Chang family is, with an outstanding person like Aunt Qing, they will not be unknown." Shen Miao smiled casually, "But for Qingyi to come to the Ding capital like this, Qingyi's husband did not follow?" Chang Zhaoqing's expression became even more awkward. Luo Shuiyan smiled, "Jiao Jiao, do not speak nonsense. Younger sister Qing is still unmarried." Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and looked at Chang Zhaoqing before asking, "One do not know how old is Qingyi this year?" To ask an unmarried young lady's age, especially when Chang Zhaoqing was not young, these words were somewhat abrupt. Even Luo Tan, who had a thick brain, stopped eating the pastries and looked at Shen Miao strangely. Shen Miao usually understood the rules and had proper etiquette, so why would she say such rude words today? Chang Zhaoqing however spoke calmly without any trace of awkwardness. 26 this year. Shen Miao widened her eyes at the right time. It seemed that she was trying to cover it up. Soon she smiled and said, "If Aunt Qing didn't say this, I would have thought that you are only 18 or 19 years old. How enviable." Even though she said it like that, the gaze that she used to size up Chang Zhaoqing was somewhat meaningful, making one feel that there was no evil intention, but it did not make one happy. Chang Zhaoqing smiled gently and did not speak anymore. Luo Shuiyan smiled, "Younger sister Qing is such a good person, would one be afraid of not finding a good husband?" I do not know about the males in the Lu province, but the number of outstanding males in the Ding capital is uncountable. If younger sister Qing were to stay here longer, perhaps one would meet a true person. Song Zaiqing quickly smiled and waved her hands, telling Luo Shuiyan not to tease her. After talking for a while, seeing that the sky was gradually getting dark, Shin Xan, Shin Qiu and Luo Ling should be returning from the Ministry of War. Thus Song Zaiqing got up to leave. Luo Shuiyan urged her to stay. Master Qiu'er and Linger will be returning soon, why not have a meal together before leaving? If Master were to see you, he would definitely be very happy. No need. Song Zaiqing smiled gently. When the sky gets dark, it would not be easy to walk. Qing Xan appreciates foreign's good intentions and will visit again in the future. Let's forget about today. It is already somewhat late. Chapter 508. Luo Shuiyan took a look outside and it was indeed nightfall, so she pulled her hands and said, "Since that is the case, then it is not good for me to keep you, lest the roads are slippery at night. It is just that seeing you today made me feel like old friends at first sight and was exceptionally happy. You must come again another day as it is very interesting to talk to you. It has been a long time since one met such a congenial person." Song Zaiqing smiled. One dare not decline foreign's hospitality and can only respectfully comply. Luo Shuiyan instructed people to prepare a horse carriage for Song Zaiqing and Shin Miao and Luo Tan followed behind. Luo Tan sighed, even though this Qing Yi came from a small family in the Lu province, her etiquette is more thorough than those in the palace. She is also gentle and kind. One really did not think that she would not be married at such an age. One do not know who would be lucky enough to marry her. Shin Miao looked at Song Zaiqing's back and did not speak. When Luo Tan saw this, she suddenly whispered in Shin Miao's ear, "Biao youngest sister, do you not like this Qing Yi?" Shin Miao was somewhat surprised as she did not expect that Luo Tan, with such a thick brain, could see her likes and dislikes. She raised her eyebrows. "She and I have no enmity, so why would I not like her? Others could not see it but I am very clear." Luo Tan said proudly, "You this person, on the surface you treat everyone well, but it is all indifferent. But today you asked Qing Yi a lot of things and moreover there were places where you were disrespectful. How would you make such a mistake? It was clearly intentional. Moreover the way you look at her was somewhat strange and different from how you look at others." Shin Miao laughed in spite of herself. "You are thinking too much." "I did not think too much. You are clearly like that." Luo Tan continued, "But even though this Qing Yi is good and youngest Gu likes her the moment she arrived, she is straightforward and sincere, but one always feel that something is not right." "What is not right?" Shin Miao asked. "Think about it. That Qing Yi's father is old General Shin's subordinate and also a benefactor, so he must be a valiant general. A tiger father does not have a dog daughter. Even if you look gentle all day long, but deep down you are like Gu Fu, very valiant and not afraid of the Tuju. But this Aunt Qing, her temperament is too gentle. Although she is candid and not bashful, why doesn't she have the air of a general?" Song Zaiqing's lips sneered and there was no trace of a military family's aura. Wrong? Song Zaiqing was more like a young lady from a military family than anyone else. She had studied the art of war to the point of perfection and quietly advanced step by step. One could not see Song Zaiqing's hostility, but it was because her acting was superb. Shin Miao looked at Luo Tan and did not correct Luo Tan's evaluation of her valiant. She only said, "Who says that a military family must be valiant? This Qing Yi grew up in the Lu province and it is possible that Chang Foreign is also from a scholarly family. Qing Yi is just following her mother's character." Luo Tan pursed her lips. "Maybe. Actually, I quite like her. But if you don't like her, I won't like her either. I'll be with you." Shin Miao said, "Many thanks to you. But why do you not like her?" Luo Tan asked curiously, "Jealous that she knows more than you?" Shin Miao swept a glance at Song Zaiqing who was being sent up the horse carriage by Luo Shuiyan and a trace of coldness flashed in her eyes. How could it be? I can't wait to be happy to have such an intelligent person. Not long after Song Zaiqing left, Shin Xian and entourage returned. Luo Shuiyan told her about Song Zaiqing's matters. Shin Xian was first surprised and then somewhat lamented. When old General Shin was alive he often mentioned Chang Hu, this loyal and brave soldier, to Shin Xian, and the Shin family was particular about gratitude. It was just that after old General Shin's death, the Chang family moved to the Lu province and there was no news of them for many years. One did not think that they would suddenly appear today. Shen Xan had seen Song Ziqing before, and at that time Song Ziqing was still a young lady. He said that if Song Ziqing had any difficulties he could help. Chapter 509. Chang Zhaoqing naturally had her difficulties, but these words could not be said in front of the juniors. After the meal, Luo Shuiyan quickly pulled Shen Xan back to the room, most likely to talk to him about Chang Ziqing's matter. These few days Shen Qiu was busy with the matters of the capital, and even Luo Ling, who had just arrived at the Ministry of War, was very busy, thus both of them would gather together to talk about matters. As for Luo Tan, she was tired after playing outside for a day and returned to her room early to rest. In the middle of the night, only Shen Miao's room was lit in the entire Shen residence. Jingzhi and Guyu had long been sent out to sleep by Shen Miao, and when the two maids saw that Shen Miao did not have the intention to rest, they thought that she was worried about Princess Mingan's matter today. After everyone had left, Shen Miao rubbed her forehead and the book in front of her did not move for a long time. She was not worried at all about Princess Mingan's matter. Huang Fuhao had lost face in front of Xie Jingxing, and that was to warn Princess Mingan, so in the recent days, Princess Mingan would be more peaceful. What made her vexed was Chang Ziqing, who came to visit the Shen residence today. That day when she went to the Fengxian pawnshop to probe Jiyushu, she saw a figure on the way back. At that time her heart was shocked, and when she looked again she had already disappeared from the crowd. Originally Shen Miao thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her, but now thinking about it, it was the truth. At that time she saw Chang Ziqing. Some things had already changed, but one did not know if it was fate for some people to appear at this time. Shen Xian's branch, from the beginning to the collapse, other than the military power, the more important thing was the departure of the people in the residence. Shen Xian was a person who did not admit defeat, and his bravery on the battlefield made him fearless towards any problems that might appear. But at the end he was forced into a desperate situation by Fu Xiuyi, and a large part of it was not only because of Fu Xiuyi's suppression. Shen Qiu died because of Jing Chu Chu, and Chang Ziqing's appearance made Luo Shuiyan lose her life. It was true that Luo Shuiyan was from the Lu province, and in the previous lifetime, not long after this time, Luo Shuiyan also appeared in front of the Shen family. At that time the Shen residents had not separated yet. Chang Ziqing was gentle and generous, and her style of conversation was well organized. Everyone in the Shen residence liked her, including Luo Shuiyan. Luo Shuiyan was a military general, and in the entire Shen residence, Ren Wanyun was too slick and Chen Roqiu was very aloof. Even though on the surface she was amiable, it was impossible for Luo Shuiyan's character to be close to them. It was this Chang Ziqing who appeared not long ago, and Luo Shuiyan was very close to her. Shen Miao previously felt that Chang Ziqing was definitely a good person. At that time she was already married to Fu Xiuyi and came back a few times to see Chang Ziqing and talk to Chang Ziqing happily. Chang Ziqing was a person who was very clever with her words, and whenever she met Chen Roqiu she would talk about poetry with her. With Luo Shuiyan she would talk about the art of war, and with Shen Miao, she would talk about how to please one's husband. She was considerate towards others and was always able to come up with strategies, thus Shen Miao liked her very much. Afterwards it was found out that Chang Ziqing was not married at the age of 26 because a young master of a large family in the Lu province had threatened to make her a concubine. That family had a big business and no one in the Lu province dared to provoke them, so no matter how outstanding Chang Ziqing was, no one dared to take the risk of becoming enemies with that family and go to the Chang family to propose marriage. After so many years, that family's actions became more and more excessive, and Chang Ziqing had no choice but to enter the Ding capital to seek shelter from her father's old friend. Shen Miao was very sympathetic towards Chang Ziqing's bitter experience. Such an intelligent and blue-hearted person was unable to marry a good person to rely on. She originally thought that Chang Ziqing would continue to stay in the Shen residence as a guest until Chen Roqiu took out a marriage certificate. It was actually the marriage certificate between Shen Xian and Chang Ziqing. Most likely it was written by old General Shen and Chang Hu, but the time was too long and everyone was not clear about the situation, so it was not an exaggeration to say that it was a joke. Chapter 510. But this marriage certificate at the end caused some things to change. One did not know who said that Chang Ziqing had not married for so many years, not only because of the coercion of the sons of the wealthy families, but also because of Shen Xian's chastity. But Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan had a deep relationship, thus this marriage certificate was somewhat awkward. At that time Cang Ziqing knelt in front of Luo Shuiyan and said that she did not have any other thoughts towards Shen Xian. That marriage certificate was just a joke of the elders and she did not take it to heart. For the rest of her life she only wished to live quietly and did not want to think about anything else. As for marrying, she had long given up on it. If the Shen family felt that it was inconvenient for her, she could go and find a temple to cut her hair and become a nun, and would definitely not disturb the Shen family. A perfectly fine young lady came over to seek shelter, and moreover she was the daughter of a benefactor. How could one let others become a nun at the end? Everyone in the Shen family tried to persuade, especially Qin Roqiu and Ren Wanyun. At the end one did not know why, but old Shen Furan actually suggested for Shen Xian to take Cang Ziqing as a concubine. Naturally Shen Xian was not willing. His own inner courtyard was clean, so what was the matter with one more female? Cang Ziqing was also not willing, but the one who finally agreed was actually Luo Shuiyan. Luo Shuiyan was a person who could not tolerate sand in her eyes, and had the fiercest character. At the beginning when she married Shen Xian, her request was that Shen Xian's inner courtyard would only be her. Shen Xian had indeed done it, but he would take the initiative to request his husband to take in Cang Ziqing. And under Cang Ziqing's helplessness she could only agree. But she said that it was only in the name of a yin-yang, and would not fulfill the duties of a yin-yang. The reason why she agreed was to solve some worries in the future. She still did not do anything on normal days. At that time Shen Miao felt that Cang Ziqing was very reasonable. How could there be such a kind person in the world? As a yin-yang she would not split favors, and was content with her place only because of the name. When Shen Miao was in Prince Ding's residence, the concubines that the officials sent over would always make her upset, but Cang Ziqing was extremely dependable. Cang Ziqing became Shen Xian's concubine in name just like that, and indeed did not have any friendship with Shen Xian, and looked like siblings. She had a good relationship with Luo Shuiyan and was initially somewhat worried, but later Shen Miao felt that it was not bad. Not long after, Luo Shuiyan was pregnant and Cang Ziqing took care of her all day long, but one did not know why Luo Shuiyan had a miscarriage in her own courtyard. After the miscarriage she was depressed all day and soon died of illness. Shen Xian was in so much pain that his hair almost turned white overnight. With Luo Shuiyan's death, Shen Xian seemed to lose his vitality and rapidly aged. Later on, when they were plotted against by Fu Xiuyi, they did not even have the strength to fight back and were even taken advantage of by the second and third households. What Shen Miao hated the most was Cang Ziqing's methods. Not to mention that Luo Shuiyan had a miscarriage for no reason at that time, but Shen Miao knew that Luo Shuiyan was a female general, so how would she become haggard and die of depression in just one night? The only person who was always by Luo Shuiyan's side and was able to speak to Luo Shuiyan was Cang Ziqing, so this matter was inextricably linked to Cang Ziqing. At that time Shen Xian also sent people to investigate, but could not find any clues. Cang Ziqing was innocent. Ever since Luo Shuiyan's death, Shen Xian did not remarry and Cang Ziqing still occupied the name of yin-yang. It was just that the first household of the Shen residence needed a female to take care of everything, so Cang Ziqing let nature take its course and became the Furan of the first household in the eyes of the servants. She was gentle and did not reveal any emotions and quickly won over the hearts of the servants, giving her the bearing of a matriarch of the household. This was the most terrifying part that Shen Miao felt. Cang Ziqing was very smart. She knew that Shen Xian's heart could not tolerate other females, and she did not want to capture Shen Xian's heart. So she started on Luo Shuiyan's body and swindled Luo Shuiyan's trust, making Luo Shuiyan see her as a relative and then ruthlessly stab her in the back. Words could hurt people, and for a person like Cang Ziqing, as long as she unintentionally said a few words, it would be able to make Luo Shuiyan suffer. When Luo Shuiyan was bedridden, Cang Ziqing did not know how many comforting words that could kill people. Chapter 511. It did not matter if Shen Xian did not acknowledge Cang Ziqing because from the beginning to the end Cang Ziqing wanted the eyes of outsiders. Once Luo Shuiyan died, she would be Shen Xian's only woman and would be Shen Furan. She would not have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of her life. Cang Ziqing was the most realistic person and she never went to pursue those ethereal feelings. She was an infuriating woman, sober and intelligent. If there were no accidents, perhaps Cang Ziqing would live on as a victim and Shen Miao would even feel that she was a pitiful woman. But the paper could not wrap up the fire. 2 years after Luo Shuiyan's death, Chang Ziqing's husband and son in the Lu province came knocking. Yes, it was Chang Ziqing's husband and son. A gambling addict husband and a sick son. Chang Ziqing had married a long time ago, and perhaps at that time both parties were in love with each other, but a poor couple had 100 sorrows. Chang Ziqing was such a proud and arrogant person. How could she tolerate growing peonies in a mud basin for the rest of her life? With the money, she abandoned her husband and son and found an excuse to head to the Ding capital. Her husband inquired for a long time before he found out that Chang Ziqing was now in the Ding capital and had become Shen Xian's concubine, so he brought his son to visit. The people of the world were in an uproar. Chang Ziqing was so gentle and elegant, but she could even abandon her sick son. It could be seen that she was not as kind as she looked on the surface. Moreover, she was full of lies, which made people call her evil. Chang Ziqing was taken away, but Shen Xian became the joke of the Ding capital. After raising someone else's wife for so many years, could this be considered as wearing a green hat? Shen Miao closed her eyes. The past was like a fleeting cloud. She had always been on guard against the day when the past would repeat itself, but she didn't expect it to be too late. Chang Ziqing appeared and was exactly the same as in the previous lifetime. She quickly made Luo Shuiyan feel close to her. In terms of acting, Shen Miao had seen two powerful females, one was Chang Ziqing and the other was Mei Furen. It was just that Mei Furen would be somewhat free and unrestrained to reveal her true nature, but because Chang Ziqing was too careful, one would not be able to catch a single handle on her. But this lifetime was not the past lifetime. Shen Miao would not let Chang Ziqing live well no matter what. As for how to make good use of this chess piece, he still had to plan carefully. Just as he was thinking, he saw the light in the room flicker. Suddenly, someone said in his ear, "What are you thinking about?" Shen Miao was startled for a moment and subconsciously leaned back and almost fell down. That person grabbed her arm and supported her back with one hand. After supporting her properly, he then withdrew his hand and stood up straight. Under the light, his face was unbelievably handsome, with a familiar mischievous smile on his face. He looked down at her and said, "Why are you so lost in thought? Are you thinking about how to repay me? What are you doing here?" Now that Shen Miao saw Xie Jingxing, she was too lazy to even be angry. But there was a trace of bewilderment in her heart. She had obviously instructed Mo Qing to increase the manpower outside the courtyard, but she did not think that Xie Jingxing would still be in an unguarded state. The people around him were so powerful, one could see the general trend from the small clues. The great Liang's methods were really overbearing. Xie Jingxing smiled, "I am here to collect my clothes." This afternoon at Princess Ming'an's place, Xie Jingxing took off his black cloak and gave it to Shen Miao to help her out of trouble. Shen Miao then remembered and saw Xie Jingxing looking at the ground with deep meaning in his eyes. Shen Miao came back in a hurry in the afternoon, and afterwards was anxious to see Chang Ziqing. Thus she brought Jingzhi and Guyu out after changing her clothes. That black cloak was casually thrown on a chair, but one did not know how it slipped down from the chair, and at the moment it was quietly lying on the ground, crumpled up into a ball, looking like a tragic sight. Xie Jingxing crossed his chest and said coldly, "You are really impolite. The clothes of Prince Rui of the Great Liang were at least expensive, but to be casually thrown away like that, it was even worse than a handkerchief used to wipe a table. Only Shen Miao would dare to do that under the heavens." Shen Miao was really not polite with him. "Your Highness's cloak is on the ground." "Many thanks." She was even too lazy to say anything. Anyway, the imperial family of the Great Liang had money, and did not lack one or two cloaks. Thinking about it, Shen Miao swept a glance at Xie Jingxing. With such good looks, but he had to change into new clothes every day. One did not know how the Great Liang could afford to raise this prodigal son. The money in the imperial treasury were all used to make clothes. Could it be that he did not go to war because there was no military pay? Xie Jingxing looked at Shen Miao for a while and spoke with interest, "You are strange today. Inexplicably throwing a temper, and your anger is so big." He raised his brows. "Is it because of that Chang Ziqing female in the residence?" Chapter 512. Shen Miao was slightly startled and looked up at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was in Mingqi's uninhabited land and was very familiar with it. Naturally, he was familiar with it as he had lived in the Ding capital since young and was familiar with every place in the Ding capital. In addition, there was the Feng Xian pawn shop behind him, which was a relay station for buying and selling information. Xie Jingxing's eyes and ears were perhaps even inferior to Fu Xiuyi's. Whatever he wanted to know, he would naturally know. What does this have to do with you? Shen Miao said snappily, Your Highness Prince Rue still have the leisure to worry about other people's family matters? Family matters? Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows as if he felt that this phrase was not bad. He said, You seem to be very afraid of women surnamed Chang. A trace of coldness flashed in Shen Miao's eyes as she said, What is there to fear about a relative who is seeking refuge? Something's not right. Xie Jingxing touched his chin and swept a glance at her before suddenly bending over and carefully staring at Shen Miao's eyes. He did not feel that it was inappropriate for him to be so close to her. He pondered for a moment and said, A woman from the Lu province. You have never been to the Lu province before, why do you seem to understand her so much? Shen Miao suddenly raised her eyes, and when she raised her eyes met with Xie Jingxing's. That youth's appearance was as breathtaking as usual, but his peach blossom eyes hid the sharpest blade. He said, It is the same for Princess Mingyan. You have never been to the Qin country but have a deep grudge against her. Shen Miao still did not speak. It was clearly an intimate and somewhat ambiguous posture, but her eyes gradually became cold. You have been living in the Ding capital since young, and the furthest place that you have been to was the Shaochun city. In the 2 years that you were in the Shaochun city, you did not step foot in other places, so it is impossible to go to the Lu province and also impossible to see the princess of the Qin country. His voice floated over from the night, bringing with it a faint chill of early winter that almost seeped into one's heart. What do you want to say? Shen Miao looked at him. He spoke in a low voice. His voice was elegant and mellow, seductive, but it also made one's heart palpitate. He said, Are you Shen Miao? For a moment, Shen Miao's entire body had a layer of goosebumps. It was as if a thin, piercingly cold wind was pouring down from the top of his head, making him feel cold in an instant. She had seen many people. Relying on her experience as an empress in her previous life, those people were just faces in front of her. There were white faces and red faces, but only this seemingly frivolous purple-robed youth in front of her was a living person. Because it was impossible to see what kind of face was under the mask. Shen Miao's impression of Xie Jingxing was that in the previous lifetime he was a handsome youth who died young. In this lifetime she knew that he was unfathomable, and now she felt that he was even more terrifying. The things that she did indeed caused others to be suspicious, but Xie Jing actually suspected if she was Shen Miao. She was not Shen Miao but Empress Shen. Xie Jingxing dared to think, and his thoughts were somewhat close to the truth. Shen Miao panicked for a moment when she felt that her secret could be seen by others. But she did not do anything. She just stared at Xie Jingxing's face and finally smiled lightly. She often smiled, and it was a dignified and gentle smile, as if she did not care about anything. When facing Xie Jingxing, most of the time it was insinuations and a cold smile that did not reach one's eyes. Now this smile seemed to be a magnolia that bloomed in the night, with a faint fragrance that spread over harmlessly. But that smile was only for a short moment, and very quickly her face turned cold. In this world, not everyone is like Your Highness Prince Rue. Xie Jingxing's playful smile slightly stagnated. One did not know if Shen Miao was Shen Miao or not, but Xie Jingxing was no longer Xie Jingxing. The little Xie Marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and had now become Prince Rue. Was this the same person? Perhaps others would find it strange, since Xie Jingxing did not have any relationship with the Great Liang in the past. Chapter 513. You are not willing to suffer a loss at all. Xie Jingxing stood up straight, and the deep meaning in his eyes disappeared as he said with a smile that was not a smile, It should still be Shen Miao. He seemed to be lamenting to himself and also seemed to be talking to Shen Miao. So many secrets, it is really tiring to inquire about them. Why is Prince Rue grabbing onto me and not letting go? Shen Miao looked at him. No matter if I have a secret or not, that has nothing to do with Prince Rue. Unfortunately, I'm interested in your secret. Xie Jingxing leisurely said, Moreover, I have thought about it. In Mingqi, the only person that can be trusted is only you. Shen Miao did not get angry but laughed instead. Prince Rue is forgetful. Isn't there still Su Mingfeng and Princess Rongxin? Xie Jingxing smiled. Didn't anyone tell you not to mention the past? She didn't know why, but under the light, the smile on his lips was still handsome and elegant, but it seemed a little lonely. But in a blink of an eye, Xie Jingxing looked at her and said, How do you plan to deal with Chang Zaiqing? If you beg this king can help you. Shen Miao said expressionlessly, I only beg Prince Rue not to intervene in this matter. Looks like you've already thought of what to do. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. Amazing. Shen Miao's eyes hung down and heard Xie Jingxing speaking again. The princess of the Qin country will not leave this matter at that. There is no need to remind me. Shen Miao glared at him fiercely. One still have to thank Prince Rue for his help today. With Princess Ming An's jealous temperament, and being infatuated with Xie Jingxing, seeing that Xie Jingxing was helping Shen Miao, she was bound to vent all her anger on Shen Miao. She's no match for you. Xie Jingxing naturally stretched out his hand to rub Shen Miao's head but was flung away by Shen Miao as she looked at her fingers with pity. Shen Miao did not want to speak. Princess Ming An did not have any brains, so she was not worried at all. The most important thing was Huang Fu Hao of the Qin country. In fact, this time Huang Fu Hao and Princess Ming An came to the Qin country. It was because of the alliance with the Ming Qi. Ming Qi wanted to be on good terms with the Qin country because the great Liang was eyeing covetously. No matter what, they could not allow Fu Xiuyi and Huang Fu Hao to mix together. Naturally, they had to expend a lot of effort to destroy the tacit alliance between the two countries. Shen Miao's gaze involuntarily landed on Xie Jingxing. In this chess game of vying for the throne, what kind of move was the great Liang playing? She didn't know. She died too early, so she did not know what Xie Jingxing's situation was like at the end of her previous life. Thinking about it, he did not die in battle, but it was like a cicada shedding its shell, returning to the great Liang to be His Highness Prince Rue. Xie Jingxing noticed her gaze and smiled. What are you suspecting? Shen Miao looked at him fixedly. When does Prince Rue intend to return to the great Liang? Can't bear to part? Xie Jingxing swept a glance at her with a smile before looking out of the window. Do not worry. One will not leave for the time being. He said, this prince also wants to see the game between Huang Fu Hao and Prince Ding to the end. Shen Miao's heart moved. Xie Jingxing said, don't you also want to see? Do not understand the meaning of Prince Rue's words. Shen Miao said one thing but meant another. Xie Jingxing bent over to pick up the black cloak on the ground. That cloak was wet from the pool water and was then casually thrown to the side. His face stiffened for a moment before he casually said, Shen Miao, you and I are the same kind of person. Your Highness is a descendant of the heavens. This official's daughter is as lowly as dust and dare not be compared. Belittling oneself. The purple-clad youth's lips hooked up. You are the same as this prince, born to be a superior person. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.